Chapter 1336. 9 Heaven's Sword Master, you win. The moment Yi Fei took control of the Sword Soul, a clear female voice came from the Sword Soul. The voice sounded helpless and speechless. Yi Fei's tired face was filled with shock. How is this possible? The undying Sword Soul can speak? And it's a woman's voice. The blood demon, who was fighting outside, felt the hair on Yi Fei's body stand on end. However, he was too busy chasing after Wudao Fa and Lu Rufeng to pay attention to Yi Fei's situation. But when he felt Yi Fei's energy center, which was about to explode, and the destructive sword qi inside, the blood demon laughed heartily. What a foolish human. He actually wants to control the Sword Soul. You have to know, that is an existence that even the great demon lord doesn't dare to dream of controlling. Run, he's not Yi Fei. He's definitely not Yi Fei. He's a demon. A demon has taken over Yi Fei's body. Wudao Fa and Lu Rufeng were filled with fear. The first time Qin Wuyang was killed, they thought it was an accident. After all, the blood demon had launched a sneak attack. But when they saw the blood demon kill Hua Qianqiu, who had an emperor weapon, with a single slash, they were dumbfounded. Even the slowest person would have realized that the person in front of them couldn't possibly be Yi Fei. If Yi Fei was so strong, he would have killed them all in the ancestral dragon abyss. Therefore, Lu Rufeng and Fa Wudao had no choice but to flee. A cruel glint flashed across the blood demon's eyes. If I let you escape and attract more human ants, I'll be able to cultivate in peace. Go to hell. Kaboom! The blood demon controlled Yi Fei's body and chased after Lu Rufeng. The blood-red saber carried the power to destroy space. With a single slash, it cut Lu Rufeng and his deity into two. Even so, Lu Rufeng was still alive. Half of his body fell to the ground. His heart was filled with deep regret and fear. Then, he saw his blood turn into a blood python that swallowed him whole. Why not? The woman's voice sounded amused and helpless at the same time. Hearing this kind of laughter, Yi Fei felt his hair stand on end and his heart turn cold. He resisted the fear of seeing a ghost and continued to ask, "Are you a sword spirit or a senior?" Seemingly understanding Yi Fei's worries, the woman said in a somewhat speechless manner, "I am a memory from the Sword Soul. A memory of the 9 Heavens Sword Master." 9 Heavens Sword Master? Yi Fei was shocked. This name sounded extremely domineering. Could it be that this sword spirit belongs to the 9 Heavens Sword Master? Why does it exist in my body? I've already said that I'm just a memory. My existence is to let the person who awakened the sword spirit know the origin of the sword spirit and then head to the 9 Heavens to find the sword master and obtain the inheritance. I don't know anything else. Does that mean that if I master the undying Sword Soul, I will be able to obtain the inheritance of the 9 Heavens Sword Master? Yi Fei was pleasantly surprised. If he could obtain the inheritance of a Sword Master, he would not have to worry about the blood demon. He would kill this old demon with a single slash. This is also the reason why I am helpless. You were chosen by the Sword Spirit as the 10th Heaven abandoned body. According to the Sword Master's law, the heaven-abandoned body needs to be in the heavenly venerable realm to awaken the Sword Spirit inheritance. It's a pity that the other 9 have all died below the martial royal realm. The woman sighed helplessly. Then, she said in a strange tone, "You are the only one who used a violent method that was close to self-destruction to force the Sword Spirit to recognize you. You also destroyed the inheritance memory that I left in the Sword Spirit. Does that mean that I won't be able to obtain the inheritance?" Hearing this bad news, Yi Fei wanted to spit out blood. His method was not gentle enough. He did not cause any damage at all. "Sister Sword Spirit, can't you make an exception?" Yi Fei was very anxious. He was still waiting to obtain the inheritance of the 9 Heavens Sword Master and then kill the blood demon. The woman sighed again, but her voice was much lower than before. "It's impossible. The price of forcefully awakening the sword spirit is that my inheritance memory will be completely destroyed. Perhaps when you become a heavenly venerable and enter the 9 heavens, perhaps there's still a chance to find. Her voice became lower and lower until it disappeared completely. Yi Fei was first in a daze, then in a daze. In the end, it turned into endless depression and anger. What a great opportunity! The inheritance could only be awakened when one reached the heavenly venerable realm. What a shocking inheritance! In the end, because his method was not gentle enough, he missed it by a hair's breadth. Although he did this purely to gain control of the indestructible sword spirit and get rid of the blood demon's control, Yi Fei was still very depressed. Then, he turned all this depression into anger and vented it on the blood demon. Damn blood demon, what a great opportunity! You destroyed it just like that. If I don't kill you, I'll write the name Yi Fei upside down. After sensing the sword spirit again and again, other than the endless destructive sword chi, he could not find any trace of memory or inheritance. Yi Fei was enraged and his eyes turned red. The first thing he did after gaining control of the sword spirit was to use the immortal force stored in it to quickly recover his almost destroyed consciousness. This time, the indestructible sword spirit did not resist and cooperated fully. However, Yi Fei tragically realized that gaining control of the sword spirit in advance had a huge side effect. That was, he still could not use the power of the sword spirit. With his current strength, he could only use 1/100,000 of the destructive aura. If he exceeded this limit, he and the indestructible sword spirit would be destroyed at the same time. Forget it, 1/100,000 is enough to turn things around. After all, this was a treasure that could only be used by heavenly venerables. He was only a martial sage, and it was already shocking that he could control it. I wonder if 1/100,000 of the sword spirit's power is enough to kill the blood demon. Yi Fei felt that he had recovered his consciousness. Yi Fei immediately released his spiritual consciousness and started to observe the battle outside. The process of Yi Fei merging with the sword spirit seemed to take a long time. However, it actually happened in a few breaths' time. The blood demon outside had never dreamed that Yi Fei would use such a violent method to forcefully activate the power of the sword spirit. Even the demon master did not dare to touch it. When Yi Fei released his spiritual consciousness and looked outside, he saw the blood demon holding the large blood saber and killing Lu Rufeng. Then, he rushed towards Fa Wudao. Although Yi Fei had expected this, he was still shocked. How is this possible? The holy sons of the 3 holy academies are all dead. Even Fa Wudao cannot escape. Then Yi Fei saw the blood demon take control of his body and use the large blood saber to destroy Fa Wudao's life wheel. Then, the saber pierced through Fa Wudao's body. Fa Wudao widened his eyes in fear. He had not expected that a genius like him would die so easily. The legalists will never let you go, bam! Fa Wudao's body exploded. All the blood in his body was refined into a drop of golden blood that fell into the blood demon's palm. The special blood of these 3 humans is not bad. After I refine them, I can immediately cultivate 3 powerful blood ancestors to conquer this world for me. Chapter 1337. Kill him. Lu Rufeng is dead. So is tyrannical Fa. And Qin Wuyang and Hua Qianqiu. Yi Fei stared blankly at the blood demon's arrogant display of power. He suddenly realized that the blood demon was using his body. In other words, the 3 sacred courts and the legalism school of magic might very well blame him for this. Thinking of this, Yi Fei felt like tearing the blood demon apart. However, he didn't act rashly. Lu Rufeng and the other 3 were all super geniuses who could fight him, but they'd all been cut down like vegetables by the blood demon. Not to mention that the blood ancestor was still controlling his body. If he rashly clashed with the blood demon now and the blood ancestor did something crazy, such as destroying his primordial spirit, he wouldn't even have a place to cry. No, even if I control the undying sword soul, I can't act rashly. Even if I want to deal with the blood demon, I have to make sure my body pays the smallest price. Yi Fei quickly made up his mind. Wasn't the blood demon a wily old fox who'd turned into a black lotus and ruthlessly tricked him? Alright, every dog has its day. Just wait and see. Yi Fei was really going all out this time. The blood demon was immersed in the joy of killing and refining the special bloodlines of tyrannical Fa and the other three. While the blood demon's consciousness wasn't paying attention, Yi Fei immediately had the undying sword soul release a terrifying aura of destruction. Then, his eyes flashed with madness as he continued his previous actions. He reached out and grabbed the hilt of the undying sword soul, ignoring the destruction of his consciousness. In response, the undying sword soul immediately released a strong wave of anger and destruction. This time, the whistling, destructive sword qi tore a terrifying crack in Yi Fei's dantian. However, Yi Fei felt that this wasn't enough. His trick of injuring himself had to be real. Otherwise, the wily old demon would definitely notice something wrong and see through it. As long as I can trick the old demon and then kill him, it'll be worth it no matter how painful it is. Undying sword soul, continue erasing my consciousness, Yi Fei let out a blood-curdling scream. This was not an act. It was the pain of having one's consciousness wiped out. It was too painful. He once again felt the intense pain of his soul being torn apart. However, Yi Fei still endured it. A vicious light flashed through the depths of his painful eyes. Damned old devil, I don't believe that such a masochistic move would be able to harm you. I won't be able to trick you. After all, Yi Fei's attempt to control the invincible sword soul had triggered a boundless destructive aura from the invincible sword soul, which had almost destroyed Yi Fei's soul. This also frightened the blood demon. He quickly withdrew all of his consciousness from the dantian space. At this moment, the blood demon was completely unaware of what was happening in the dantian space. However, the blood devil didn't let his guard down because of this. He used some mysterious demon secret art to refine the special bloodlines of Fa Wudao and the others into 4 resplendent blood crystals at the fastest speed possible. Then, the blood demon immediately withdrew all of his consciousness and returned to Yi Fei's dantian space. His powerful demon god consciousness instantly sensed the terrifying destructive aura that was everywhere in the dantian space. This caused the blood devil to be inwardly shocked. However, when he saw Yi Fei's consciousness within his dantian space being continuously ground away by the destructive aura of the sword soul, his consciousness quickly turned blurry and into nothingness. The blood demon was so happy that he started laughing. You humans are really stupid and stubborn. You know that there's no hope, but you still hope for a miracle. A mere ant wants to control the invincible sword soul. If you succeed, I'll change my surname to yours. The blood demon's face was filled with mockery and pride. Good son, let me hear you call me father. Yi Fei immediately retorted in the face of the blood demon's mockery. You're about to die, and you still dare to be so stubborn. The blood demon was enraged when he heard this. Seeing that Yi Fei was at the end of his rope and that the destructive aura from the invincible sword soul was within his acceptable range, the cunning blood demon immediately realized that this was the perfect opportunity to erase Yi Fei's consciousness, seize the invincible sword soul, and seize Yi Fei's body. Kill. The blood demon's consciousness once again transformed into his 3-headed, 6-armed battle form. He stepped on a black lotus and formed an invisible layer of defense. As he blocked the destructive aura around him, he laughed sinisterly and slapped out a bloody palm. He wanted to completely destroy Yi Fei's consciousness. As long as this brat dies, I'll be able to completely take over this body and become the new master of the invincible sword soul. When that happens, all the demon gods and demon masters will have to bow down to me." The blood demon seemed to have imagined the day when he would rule over the 9 heavens and have all the demon gods and demon masters kneeling at his feet. He instantly felt refreshed. Even the way he looked at Yi Fei became much more pleasing to the eye. Then, his bloody palm grabbed Yi Fei and crushed Yi Fei like an ant on the ground. Kill! Yi Fei had been waiting for this moment. At this moment, his consciousness was almost completely destroyed. However, his connection with the invincible sword soul was extremely close. With a single thought, the invincible sword soul, which seemed to be resisting, suddenly became murderous. Chi! A ray of destructive sword light suddenly flew past Yi Fei and destroyed the blood demon's bloody palm. This bloody palm was also formed by the blood demon's consciousness. When the bloody palm was destroyed, part of the blood demon's consciousness was destroyed. The excruciating pain of his soul being torn apart instantly made the blood demon cry out in pain. However, before the blood demon could regain his senses, the originally scattered destructive sword aura in the entire space suddenly gathered together and formed a destructive sword storm. It whistled and surrounded the blood demon. Bam! Even the black lotus protecting his body couldn't block this terrifying destructive aura. The blood demon only felt that his consciousness was in excruciating pain and his soul was being torn apart. The intense pain made him almost go crazy. The transformation of the invincible sword soul immediately made the blood demon go completely crazy and fearful. The blood demon would never have thought that Yi Fei would really miraculously control the invincible sword soul. Furthermore, he was so cunning that he used the self-torture trick to trick the blood demon into entering his Dantian space and ruthlessly tricked him again. Roar! The blood demon was so angry that he roared on the spot. He decisively split his consciousness, and a part of it turned into a bloody python. It opened its mouth and crazily swallowed Yi Fei and the invincible sword soul. The other part of his consciousness turned into a ray of bloody light and crazily charged out of his Dantian space, escaping the pursuit of the invincible sword soul. "Where do you think you're going?" The huge bloody python suddenly exploded. Yi Fei didn't even have time to recover his consciousness. This was because the blood demon had charged directly towards his primordial spirit when he escaped from his Dantian space. If the blood demon had succeeded, this demon could have completely destroyed his primordial spirit, causing his primordial spirit to collapse and become a cripple. Chapter 1338. Be ruthless. Blood demon, if I don't kill you today, I'll change my surname to yours. Yi Fei's eyes were red as he charged out of his Dantian with the undying sword soul. This scene scared the blood demon out of his wit. As the host, Yi Fei could borrow the power of the undying sword soul, but he couldn't control it or bring it out of his Dantian. If he did, the uncontrollable destructive aura of the undying sword soul would instantly destroy Yi Fei's body and the space around him. This was why the blood demon was willing to sacrifice part of his consciousness to escape from Yi Fei's Dantian. However, the blood demon didn't expect Yi Fei to not only control the undying sword soul, but also control the destructive aura of the undying sword soul and bring it out of his Dantian. In this moment of shock and hesitation, Yi Fei's consciousness managed to catch up to the blood demon before his primordial spirit could be destroyed. At the same time, a destructive sword light was released. Facing the blood demon, Yi Fei was really ruthless this time. He directly activated the terrifying power of the undying sword soul. Boom! The terrifying undying sword soul immediately locked onto the blood demon and released a destructive aura as it slashed towards the blood demon. Under this aura, the blood demon instantly let out a blood-curdling scream. He didn't even have time to split his consciousness before he felt the immense fear of death. The blood demon wasn't willing to give up. His entire consciousness was emitting a thick, venomous hatred. Just as the destructive sword Qi was about to destroy his consciousness, the blood demon suddenly made a decision. The drop of essence blood that contained a portion of the demon god's power appeared in his palm. Then, the blood demon split a part of his consciousness and turned it into a blood python that rushed towards the undying sword soul. The other part of his consciousness rushed into the demon blood. Bam! The undying sword soul instantly destroyed the blood python. However, just as the remaining power of the undying sword soul was about to destroy the demon blood, the drop of demon blood suddenly rushed into Yi Fei's blood with hatred and determination. It completely merged with Yi Fei's blood. Yi Fei, if I die, you will die too. Don't even think about destroying me. The blood demon's venomous voice came from the blood. Sword soul, stop. Yi Fei was covered in cold sweat. The blood demon was too cunning. A demon god that could survive from ancient times wasn't that easy to kill. Just like how the blood demon didn't expect Yi Fei to merge with the undying sword soul, Yi Fei didn't expect it too. The blood demon was actually able to merge with his blood. This way, if Yi Fei insisted on killing the blood demon, then he would have no choice but to let the undying sword soul destroy all the blood in his body. How was that different from suicide? This was also the most powerful and troublesome aspect of the blood demons. As long as they had blood, the blood demons were almost immortal. Of course, there was a price for the blood demon to use such a heaven-defying method to control his blood. Yi Fei was shocked to find that as the blood demon's demon blood merged with his body seemed to have undergone a miraculous change. It's a special bloodline. After merging with the demon blood, I actually have a special bloodline. It's the purest demon god bloodline. Boom. This discovery made Yi Fei feel both lucky and depressed. He was lucky that he finally had a special bloodline, and it was a powerful demon god bloodline. This gave him more confidence to catch up with a peerless genius like Di Fan. What was depressing was that this bloodline had its own consciousness. It was the consciousness of the blood demon that hated him to the core. If the blood demon secretly controlled his blood during battle, causing it to flow in the opposite direction, or messing up his meridians during cultivation, Yi Fei wouldn't even know how he died. Therefore, he would rather not have such a dangerous bloodline. He had to get rid of the cunning blood demon. Blood demon, get out here. Yi Fei's face was dark. After severely injuring the blood demon, he had regained control of his body. However, he wasn't happy at all. Instead, his face was dark. He wanted to grab the blood demon and chop him up. Scram! If you want me to come out, you have to kneel down and kiss my toes. Then, swear that you will be loyal to me and be my livestock forever. If you do that, I will consider sharing this body with you. We will become the masters of the sword souls at the same time. The blood demon's cold words passed through his blood and into Yi Fei's mind. Then, Yi Fei felt his blood roaring in his body. It was like a surging river, causing his blood to become chaotic and his veins to bulge. Blood was the power of the blood demon. Although it was a pity that he couldn't destroy Yi Fei's primordial spirit, as long as he merged with Yi Fei's blood, the blood demon had many ways to torture Yi Fei. He could even kill Yi Fei when Yi Fei wasn't paying attention. Blood demon, come out. As long as you share my body, we can talk. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite. The veins on Yi Fei's forehead bulged. This was his body. He wouldn't share it with a demon. As he spoke, he suddenly controlled the undying sword soul to charge towards the place where his blood and chi were in chaos. That place immediately calmed down, and the blood demon was nowhere to be seen. As expected, the blood demon's control over blood is incredible. However, it's impossible for him to completely merge with my blood. Completely merging with his blood would mean that the blood demon was willing to be refined by Yi Fei and help Yi Fei become the new blood demon. Naturally, the blood demon wouldn't do such a stupid thing. Therefore, even though the blood demon had fused the devil blood into Yi Fei's blood, his consciousness had become a part of Yi Fei's blood and was constantly flowing through Yi Fei's body, not giving Yi Fei a chance to find him and destroy him. Looks like this blood demon won't obediently leave my body if I don't give him a good beating. Since that's the case, don't blame me." The two sides fought back and forth for a while. Yi Fei couldn't find which part of the blood demon's consciousness was hidden in his blood. He was too lazy to look for it. "Since I can't find it, I might as well refine all of my blood. If the blood demon still doesn't come out, I'll just refine him to death." With that thought, Yi Fei stopped worrying about the blood demon. He quickly ran to a place not far away and collected all the spatial belts of the four before leaving this bloody place. About 3 days later, Yi Fei found an uninhabited mountain and stopped. During this time, he also checked Wu Dao's spatial belt. As expected, he found more than 40 billion high-grade spirit stones inside. In addition to the 90 billion high-grade spirit stones he extorted from the saintess at Sunluo Temple, Yi Fei's total spirit stones had surpassed the 100 billion mark. "Blood demon, this is your last chance. Are you coming out or not? Scram and wait for me to use your blood to recover my cultivation. I will refine you into a puppet and torture you for eternity." Chapter 1339. Causing a disaster. The blood demon was indeed confident. After all, he was a demon god. If not for Yi Fei's undying sword soul, which happened to be his nemesis, the blood demon would have tortured Yi Fei to death even if he only had a fragment of his consciousness left. As long as Yi Fei could not lock onto his position, he did not have to worry about Yi Fei's threat. Instead, the blood demon took advantage of the opportunity to absorb Yi Fei's blood and tried his best to recover his damaged consciousness by absorbing Yi Fei's blood. In less than 3 days, Yi Fei felt the blood in his body begin to deplete. His face turned pale, and he showed signs of anemia like a normal person. This made him even more determined to kill the blood demon. "If I don't get rid of the blood demon, there will always be a fatal danger in my body. Also, the secret of the undying sword soul could be exposed at any time." Yi Fei did not know what level of treasure the undying sword soul was, but from the fact that the blood demon was willing to turn into a fragment of blood to stay in his body and compete with him, he knew that the secret of the undying sword soul could not be exposed. Once it was exposed, it could lead to a fatal disaster. At the same time, considering the blood demon's unimaginable demon god methods, even if there were no outsiders, Yi Fei did not dare to let Xiao Chao and the dragon turtle out. He only instructed Xiao Chao to cultivate obediently inside. Yi Fei had already found a hidden corner in the barren mountain. He used his true yuan to shatter space and create a temporary secret realm. He entered this space and took out the 40 billion spirit stones he had plundered, as well as all the spirit stones he had obtained from Dark Azura Hall. He filled the secret realm in one go. Then, Yi Fei activated his primordial spirit and began to absorb and refine the spirit stones. The rolling spirit energy immediately turned into a howling hurricane. The energy fluctuations from the 100 billion spirit stones caused the spiritual energy to transform into numerous spirit dragons that roared as they rushed into Yi Fei's body. However, they didn't enter his meridians. In the end, now that the blood demon had control over his blood, he could also use his blood to influence his tendons and veins. Using his tendons and veins to cultivate was just courting death. However, Yi Fei still had a cultivation method that could be cultivated without using meridians. That was the battle god Dao. The battle demon path cultivates the flesh, allowing the flesh to be indestructible. The battle god path cultivates the soul, allowing the soul to be indestructible. The two complemented each other and fused together to walk the path of the strongest martial path, which is the path of despair. Yi Fei's eyes flashed with determination. To destroy this demon. Let's see if the blood demon will be afraid then. Even if I can't refine you to death, I'll scare you to death, Yi Fei said viciously. The blood demon was immediately aware of his actions. The blood demon was so angry that he almost went crazy. He felt that this scene was very familiar. Thinking about it, the blood demon was so angry that he coughed up blood. When he was cultivating the immemorial celestial art, Yi Fei had also been so frightened. He had constantly tried to talk to him, trying to slow down the speed of his cultivation. Damn it, if those 4 ants didn't disturb me, I would have mastered the atavistic heaven art long ago. Even if this kid has the immortal sword spirit, I can still resist him with the atavistic heaven art. The blood demon's eyes flickered with fear. He had the urge to stop Yi Fei from cultivating. Unfortunately, Yi Fei was too smart. The battle god Dao mainly focused on cultivating the soul. Even if the blood demon was capable, he could not interfere with Yi Fei's cultivation as long as Yi Fei did not channel his blood. However, the blood demon still came up with an evil plan, which was to attract the attention of powerful human experts to eliminate the demon. It was just like how Lu Rufeng and the others had sneakily attacked the blood demon and ruined his cultivation of the atavistic heaven art. As such, the blood demon did not interfere with Yi Fei's cultivation of the divine battle Dao. It continued to unleash a terrifying murderous intent and an eerie demonic aura through Yi Fei's blood, causing the nearby demonic beasts to fall into a frenzy. The blood demon was taking a gamble. If he released such a terrifying demonic aura, it would definitely attract the attention of human experts. If another group of experts like Lu Rufeng came and attacked Yi Fei, his plan would succeed. Unfortunately, the blood demon did not know that Lu Rufeng and the others had come specifically to kill Yi Fei. That was why they had come. Of course, Yi Fei did not know that the blood demon had taken control of his body and killed Lu Rufeng and the others. It had caused a huge commotion in the legalist school and the 3 sacred academies, almost at the same time as Lu Rufeng and the others were killed by the blood demon. In a certain place filled with soul lamps in the Divine Martial Sacred Academy, a soul lamp marked with the Holy Sun's name suddenly went out. In the Heavenly Tao Sacred Academy, an elder was smiling as he led Zhao Yu into the Academy's soul hall. He wanted to replace Hua Qianqiu's soul lamp with Zhao Yu's soul lamp. Suddenly, the soul lamp representing Hua Qianqiu went out. The elder's face was filled with astonishment. Then, he became furious. Who dares to kill the Holy Sun? This is a declaration of war against the Heavenly Book Sacred Academy. In the Heavenly Book Sacred Academy, a middle-aged quasi-emperor roared furiously when he sensed that Qin Wuyang's soul lamp had gone out. This quasi-emperor was Qin Wuyang's master. At the same time, in the small world of the legalist school, the head of the legalist school was listening in disbelief to the elder in charge of the soul lamps. What did you say? Wu Dao is dead? My most outstanding son, my most talented son. Who is it? Who killed my son? Boom. The young face of the head of the legalist school was filled with boundless fury. At the same time, an aged voice filled with killing intent rang out from a certain palace in the depths of the legalist school. Investigate immediately and find out who did it. This old man will personally exterminate this person's entire family. Men, women, old and young. Leave no one alive. Yes, Patriarch. The Patriarch of the legalist school was furious. Countless people in the legalist school were trembling, including the cities controlled by the legalist school. Countless martialists and mortals prostrated themselves on the ground, trembling in fear of the Patriarch of the legalist school. What made the elders of the Fa family feel lucky was that when Fa Wudao had joined forces with Lu Rufeng and the others, he had thought that Chen Mengyao was a burden. After using her to escape from the ancestral dragon abyss, he had chased Chen Mengyao back. The Patriarch of the legalist school had easily interrogated her about everything that had happened in the ancestral dragon abyss, as well as how Wu Dao had joined forces with the Holy Sun to ambush Yi Fei. Patriarch, young Master Wu Dao might have died at the hands of Yi Fei. Chen Mingyao's face was filled with hatred and delight as she revealed everything she knew. Yi Fei, don't blame me. I only want to survive. I just want to live a better life than everyone in the northern region. I want to have a higher status. Chen Mengyao comforted herself in her heart. Then, her expression changed drastically. She heard an aged voice in the depths of the small world roar like a lion. Chapter 1340. All the quasi-emperors came out. Yi Fei, the legalism patriarch, wasn't the only one roaring. The quasi-emperors of the Divine Martial Sacred Academy, the Heavenly Tao Sacred Academy, and the Heavenly Strategy Sacred Academy all roared in anger. Yi Fei should be killed. A quasi-emperor covered in flames walked out of seclusion in the Divine Martial Sacred Academy. His name was Lu Rulong, and he was Lu Rufeng's uncle. Before the Lu family of the Divine Wrath Quasi-Emperor had risen, the Lu family had been the strongest family in the Divine Martial Sacred Academy. More than half of the saints came from the Lu family. Now, someone had killed the genius of the Lu clan, the Holy Prince of the Sacred Institute. Even if Yi Fei had helped the Divine Martial Sacred Institute a little, he couldn't stop the quasi-emperor of the Lu clan from wanting to kill Yi Fei. This time around, that Yi Fei is most likely finished. He reaped what he sowed. He could have killed anyone, but he killed Lu Rufeng. This is his crime. Brother, that's not right. I remember that Yi Fei saved you before. Bullshit. Even without the help of that trash, I could have easily escaped from the Blood Demon sect. A Divine Martial Sacred Academy disciple's face turned red as he denied it. The others opened their mouths, wanting to expose him, but they all chose to protect themselves when they felt the quasi-emperor's anger. Yi Fei, don't blame us. It's not that we don't want to help you, but our words don't carry much weight. It's useless to plead for you. These people comforted each other. It was a different scene in the Heavenly Strategy Sacred Academy. Hearing that Yi Fei was in trouble, Dongfang Yu knelt outside the dean's palace without hesitation. Dongfang Yu, please give Yi Fei a chance to explain. Please, Dean. A few old, middle-aged disciples rushed over and knelt with Dongfang Yu. They were the few people that Yi Fei had saved. Most of the disciples who had become blood slaves chose to remain silent, especially after they found out that the furious quasi-emperor was Qin Huang's master. Scram! If anyone dares to speak up for Yi Fei again, I will personally cripple his primordial spirit and expel him from the Holy Academy. A middle-aged man riding a green demonic bull rushed out of the palace. His eyes were filled with anger and killing intent. The middle-aged disciples beside Dongfang Yu were so scared that their expressions changed. They got up and left in shame. In the end, only Dongfang Yu remained kneeling on the ground. Behind him was an old disciple who was also kneeling without moving. You guys aren't leaving? The middle-aged man on the demonic bull seemed to be somewhat surprised, but he was even more furious and filled with killing intent. I won't leave. Brother Yi is my friend. I, Dongfang Yu, will not leave even if I die. Dongfang Yu's tone was firm. The old disciple behind revealed a bitter smile and said, When this disciple was a blood slave, I was tortured too miserably. I do not have many years left to live. This disciple does not wish to let my conscience down before I die. Quasi-Emperor, please show mercy. Show mercy? Have we not shown enough mercy to that demon? He did save you guys. Our 3 holy academies also gave him a chance to turn over a new leaf. However, that evil brat Yi Fei did not repent and even went from bad to worse. If we don't get rid of this demon, how will our 3 holy academies have any face left? Another quasi-emperor came from outside the holy academy. This person had an indifferent expression and he was surrounded by the aura of the heavenly Tao. The demonic bull quasi-emperor did not dare to be negligent. He quickly went up and greeted. So it is Taoist Hulong actually came out of seclusion as well. Huoqianqiu is my disciple and the previous holy son of our heavenly Tao Sacred Academy. I heard that Huoqianqiu was good friends with your disciple Qin Huang when he was alive. Hence, I came to invite Taoist Huaqianqiu to kill that evil brat Yi Fei together. When the fire dragon quasi-emperor stated his intentions, it was exactly what the demonic bull quasi-emperor wanted. The two smiled at each other. Then, they ignored the two people on the ground and soared into the sky at the same time. Dongfang Yu's expression immediately changed. A quasi-emperor of the Heavenly Tao Sacred Academy actually made a move. Zhao Yu, did she not stop them? True Martial Sacred Academy. It had been 3 years since Yi Fei left. Xia Jun, Lin Tianjiao, and Fatty did not leave the Holy Academy. They were all cultivating crazily. The martial emperor, Old Lu, had told them that as long as they broke through to the half-emperor realm and became the Son of Heaven, the true Martial Sacred Academy would allow them to enter the Dragon Head world to train and look for Yi Fei. Hence, Xia Jun and the others were working very hard. However, it was too difficult to pass the Heaven grade test in 3 years, unless they were like Yi Fei and used an imperial weapon to cheat. Unfortunately, after the lesson of Yi Fei, the true Martial Sacred Academy had already fixed this loophole in the Heaven grade test. Who dares to barge into the true Martial Sacred Academy? Boom! The small world of the true Martial Sacred Academy suddenly shook violently. Someone had openly barged into the true Martial Sacred Academy. Many martial emperors were shocked. On the mountain, Xia Jun and the others also woke up from their cultivation. Lin Tianjiao and the others were confused and depressed. Had the true Martial Sacred Academy really declined to such a state? Someone had openly barged in? Only Xia Jun's nose twitched. His dejected expression suddenly became excited. There is a fragrance. The other party is definitely a peerless beauty. I know, it's sister-in-law. Suddenly, a biting cold wind whistled in the sky. In an instant, Xia Jun was frozen into a huge ice block. Lin Tianjiao's face was also covered in ice shards. Only Fatty Pang Bei was able to withstand the attack. The moment the ice mountain came, a violent demonic ape suddenly rushed out of his body. The demonic ape punched the sky with both hands. There was a loud boom. The whistling ice mountain was torn apart. The biting cold wind turned into a strange field full of demonic qi. After 3 years, the little fatty's progress could only be described as terrifying. After all, this was the only inheritance of the monster race in the human world that the monster god valued. Little monkey, do you want to die? You're making such a big noise in broad daylight. You're disturbing my spiritual melon. By the way, Zhao Yu, do you want to eat melons? After 3 years, Shangluo was still the same. She was eating melons anytime and anywhere. Not only did she eat them, but she also took out a melon and handed it to the sky. In the sky, the cold wind whistled. A woman with snow-white hair walked out. Lin Tianjiao suddenly shook his head. She's not Zhao Yu. She's Zhao Yu's incarnation of the Heavenly Tao. At this time, Zhao Yu's incarnation stared coldly at Shangluo. Shangluo also looked at Zhao Yu with a smile. They nodded slightly as if they were already familiar with each other. But for some unknown reason, Gua King, who was hiding in the back, felt that there was a faint killing intent between the two of them. And what was even more terrifying was that when Zhao Yu looked at the aura that had fused with the Heavenly Tao, everyone retreated. Only Shangluo was calm and composed, calmly eating melons. Even old Lu, who was paying attention to this, couldn't bear to continue watching this leisurely action. Without a sound, old Lu appeared in the sky. His expression was solemn. The Heavenly Tao Sacred Academy's Saintess, why have you barged into my true Martial Sacred Academy? Chapter 1341. 8th Layer Battle God Tao. What? A quasi-emperor wants to make a move on Big Brother. The massive block of ice suddenly shattered, and Xia Jun angrily strode out from within. His body was shockingly suffused with an intense immortal true essence. Among them, only Xia Jun had cultivated the immortal emperor scripture to an extremely high level. Unfortunately, Xia Jun did not have a special bloodline. Even though he cultivated very hard, he was still unable to pass the heaven rank test of the Sacred Institute and become the emperor. Old Lu's face was filled with shock. Then, he quickly rushed to the quasi-emperor's palace as fast as he could. He cursed in his heart, "Yi Fei, you little bastard! Will you die if you don't cause trouble for a day? You even angered the quasi-emperors of the 3 Sacred Institute." Thinking about the wrath of a quasi-emperor, even Elder Lu was secretly apprehensive. Seeing Elder Lu's action, a bright light flashed across Zhao Yu's cold eyes before it dimmed again. She took one last look at Shang Luo before her body suddenly turned into a sheet of ice and dissipated between heaven and earth. What a terrifying method! Zhao Yu is probably about to merge with the heavenly Tao. She might be going through the martial emperor tribulation soon. Lin Tianjiao suddenly said in horror. It's just the martial emperor tribulation. Give me a year and I'll definitely catch up to her. Shanglua stopped eating her melon. A rare battle intent appeared in her eyes. After all, she was also a martial emperor. In terms of talent, she was on par with Zhao Yu. What was a martial emperor? Born extraordinary, a martial emperor. This was a martial emperor. In the 4 sacred institutes, someone once made a vague classification of geniuses. Ordinary cultivators with strong constitutions were considered ordinary geniuses. Martial artists with special bloodlines were special geniuses. If their bloodlines were strong enough, they could become super geniuses. For example, Fa Wudao and the others were considered super geniuses. Above super geniuses were top-notch geniuses like Martial Emperor. They were born extraordinary, with shocking battle strength and breakthroughs in their cultivation. They could be said to be heaven-defying. Above the top geniuses were natural-born saints like Difan, or people like Fu Renjie, who had been born with a demon birth heavenly fetus. They were no longer born extraordinary, but were born divine, accompanied by all kinds of strange phenomena. According to the words of ordinary people, this was the descent of a god. They were also known as peerless geniuses. There might not even be one in 10,000 years. Compared to them, us ordinary geniuses are really under too much pressure. Xia Jun felt even more pressure as he looked at the disappearing cold wind. At the same time, Yi Fei also sighed. Compared to a peerless genius like Difan, an ordinary genius like me is still under a lot of pressure. Although Yi Fei had already fused with the demon blood and had the bloodline of the demon god, he did not dare to use this power at all. The blood demon was hiding in his blood all the time, looking for an opportunity to give him a fatal blow. Of course, Yi Fei might be able to tolerate it if the blood demon was just hiding like this. What he could not tolerate the most was that the blood demon was shameless enough to control his blood and turn it into a whirlpool to continuously absorb the spiritual energy he refined in order to stop him from cultivating. This way, for every 10% of spiritual energy that Yi Fei absorbed, only 80% would enter his primordial spirit to cultivate the god of war path. The remaining 20% would be absorbed by the blood demon to strengthen its consciousness. If this situation continued, not only would Yi Fei not be able to break through the god of war path, he might even inadvertently help the blood demon. Of course, Yi Fei could not tolerate this. He had thought of stopping the blood demon, but compared to the old demon who had cultivated for tens of thousands of years, he was still too inexperienced. After several fights, not only did he not gain any advantage, the blood demon even took the opportunity to steal some of his spiritual energy. He could clearly feel that the blood demon's consciousness, which had been severely damaged by the undying sword soul, was showing signs of recovery. Yi Fei could not tolerate this anymore. He finally stopped cultivating the god of war path and said angrily, "Blood demon, don't go overboard. I said, get out of my body, and I won't make things difficult for you. I can swear." "Screw your swearing, you little demon. You've tricked this god twice in a row. If this god believes half of your nonsense again, this god will be transformed from a pig." The blood demon's tyrannical voice came from Yi Fei's body. That voice was filled with venom and deep-rooted hatred. Just hearing that voice made Yi Fei feel a chill down his spine. It also strengthened his resolve to get rid of the blood demon. No, I have to think of a way to stop this old demon from absorbing spiritual energy. Otherwise, if this old demon regains even a little bit of his consciousness, it will be a great danger to me. Yi Fei knew that the blood demon was madly absorbing his spiritual energy to prevent him from breaking through to the 8th stage of the God of War path. However, the more nervous the blood demon was, the more determined Yi Fei was to break through. Blood demon, you forced me to do this. Don't think that I can't do anything about it. Although the blood demon was despicable for stealing spiritual energy, Yi Fei was also a shrewd monkey. When he felt the blood demon's malice, he immediately thought of a good idea to return an eye for an eye. He started cultivating the God of War path again. Like the God of War path, cultivating the God of War path also required an enormous amount of spiritual energy to strengthen one's soul. The only difference was that the God of War path required one to turn every cell into a star. On the other hand, the God of War path required one to turn their soul into 365 deities. Each deity was equivalent to a complete soul. When all 365 deities were stacked together, even a martial emperor would not be able to destroy his soul. When 1/3 of the deities were formed, he would be able to break through to the 8th stage of the God of War path. When 2/3 of the deities were formed and the 9th stage was completed, he would be able to break through to the 10th stage of the God of War path. He would have the ability to fight opponents 10 levels above him, and 10 levels higher was the standard for an exceptional genius. This was why Di Fan said to Yi Fei, even if Yi Fei merged with the force of despair for the 5th time, he could only be considered half a match. Only by 10 levels higher would Yi Fei be able to officially challenge an exceptional genius. In order to reach this point, I will do anything. Even if I am facing an exceptional genius, I will definitely surpass him. Undying Sword Soul, absorb. Buzz. The undying sword soul vibrated. Suddenly, a terrifying suction force came from Yi Fei's body. Originally, the undying sword soul was picky and would not bother to absorb low-level energy like spiritual stones. However, Yi Fei had already fully grasped the Undying Sword Soul, and was officially the owner of the Undying Sword Soul. No matter how unwilling the Undying Sword Soul was, it could only obediently absorb the disgusting spiritual energy. However, before the Undying Sword Soul could convert the spiritual energy into destructive sword energy, Yi Fei suddenly ordered in a deep voice, "Undying Sword Soul, release. Remember, release only at me." This was the method Yi Fei thought of to deal with the blood demon. Didn't this demon want to steal his spiritual energy? Fine, he would first absorb the spiritual energy into the Undying Sword Soul, and then release it in a small area for Yi Fei to absorb and refine. If the blood demon dared to steal it at this time, then it would be perfect. Yi Fei would use the Undying Sword Soul to kill this demon 10,000 times. Chapter 1342. Boundary Emperor Assassination. Yi Fei ignored the blood demon's curses. He realized that controlling the indestructible sword soul to absorb the spirit stones before releasing the spirit energy was indeed a good way to suppress the blood demon. Although this would affect the speed of his cultivation as he refined the spirit energy, it would obviously affect the blood demon more. At the start, the blood demon only needed to take advantage of Yi Fei's cultivation to control his blood and use a secret technique to continuously steal the spirit energy that entered Yi Fei's body. However, as Yi Fei absorbed all the spirit energy through the indestructible sword soul, it was almost impossible for the blood demon to steal the spirit energy from Yi Fei while he was cultivating. Unless the blood demon was really courageous and dared to expose his consciousness to the indestructible sword soul. Of course, the blood demon didn't have the guts to do so. As such, Yi Fei's tyrannical method of taking all the spirit energy for himself. The blood demon had already reached a point where his heart was filled with hatred and hatred. Damn little demon, don't let me find a chance. Otherwise, I'll definitely turn you into a puppet and torture you for at least 10,000 years. The blood demon was filled with hatred. Originally, he had predicted that Yi Fei would need a huge amount of spirit energy to break through to the combat god Dao stage. This way, he could casually steal a bit of spirit energy. Even if it was only 20%, he would be able to stop Yi Fei from breaking through to the 8th level of the combat god Dao stage. At the same time, he could also use the stolen spirit energy to recover his consciousness that was damaged by the indestructible sword soul. This was a situation where he could kill two birds with one stone. In the end, Yi Fei used a crooked method to forcefully cut off the blood demon's method of stealing spirit energy. This was something that the blood demon couldn't accept. First, he cursed furiously and madly in an attempt to affect Yi Fei's state of mind. It would be best if he could cause Yi Fei's cultivation to go berserk. However, Yi Fei was already prepared for this. He immediately sealed off his 5 senses and 6 senses and entered a state of cultivation where he forgot about everything around him. This caused the blood demon to curse until his saliva dried up, but he still couldn't shake his state of mind. Yi Fei began to cultivate the battle god's Dao very quickly. Deep within his soul, rumbling sounds could be heard. His originally complete soul began to shrink and transform under the influence of the battle god's Dao. Rumble. Sensing that Yi Fei's cultivation had reached a critical juncture, the undying sword soul immediately increased the amount of spiritual energy it released. During this period of time, whenever Yi Fei was cultivating, the blood demon would definitely do everything possible to steal his spiritual energy and interrupt his process of becoming a god. However, this time, the blood demon mustered up his courage 3 times in a row. He wanted to take the opportunity to snatch food from the tiger's mouth and interrupt Yi Fei's cultivation. However, the blood demon had no choice but to give up. It was because he was too afraid of the undying sword soul and had been tricked by Yi Fei too many times. At this time, Blood Devil no longer had the courage to charge forward and be tricked by Yi Fei again. He could only stare at Yi Fei with bloodshot eyes like a caged beast. He coldly and cruelly stared at Yi Fei's every move, hoping to find something that Yi Fei had overlooked. However, the blood demon soon despaired again. He realized that Yi Fei was smarter than a monkey. The spiritual energy released by Yi Fei's undying sword soul was not continuous. Instead, it was intermittent. Whenever he condensed a god, he would immediately pause to observe the blood demon's reaction before continuing to cultivate the next god in his soul. His cowardly, fearful, cautious, and wretched actions immediately angered the blood demon so much that his consciousness almost vomited blood. In the end, he could not help but curse aloud, "Coward! Trash! You've already tricked me to the point where I'm only left with a fragment of consciousness, yet you're still guarding against me like I'm a thief. No, I have to find a way to interrupt his cultivation, or it'll be bad." After waiting for around half a month, the blood demon still failed to find an opportunity to interrupt Yi Fei's cultivation. Instead, the number of souls and gods in Yi Fei's body had already reached 100. The blood demon suddenly fell silent. He finally understood what Yi Fei felt when he first saw him cultivate an immemorial heavenly art. It was fear and despair. Even when he was suppressed by the flesh Buddhas of the Chan monastery of Devanaga, the blood demon had never experienced such despair. However, he was still a demon god who had lived for several tens of thousands of years after all. When he discovered in despair that he could no longer interrupt Yi Fei's cultivation, the blood demon descended into complete madness. He began to exhaust what little consciousness he had left in the first place, desperately releasing dense demon qi. He had no idea what method he used to activate Yi Fei's golden body of the heavenly dragon. The 8 heavenly dragons roared furiously at the same time. The terrifying sound waves spread out in all directions, attracting the attention of countless evil demons. This also made Yi Fei extremely nervous. He was worried that the blood demon would attract powerful martial emperors or quasi-emperors over and interrupt his cultivation. However, Yi Fei's worries were unnecessary. The blood demon's roars were all for nothing. As soon as they sensed the blood demon's appearance, the quasi-emperors of the Dark Azura Hall had already appeared secretly and transferred away all the evil demons within a radius of 5,000 kilometers. Of course, it was not as if the quasi-emperors of the Dark Azura Hall had not considered coming over to check on the blood demon's condition, as well as see whether Yi Fei could still be saved. However, the quasi-emperors of the Dark Azura Hall gave up on this idea very soon. The deaths of Lu Rufeng and the other three could not be hidden from the powerful Dark Azura Hall. The fact that the legalism ancestor, the Fire Dragon Quasi-Emperor, and so on had entered the Dragon Head world could not be hidden from the eyes and ears of the Dark Azura Hall either. The Quasi-Emperors of the Dark Azura Hall thought of a good idea very soon, which was to use the 4 foreign Quasi-Emperors to test the Blood Demon first. If the Blood Demon is weak, we'll strike together and take advantage of the situation. If the Blood Demon is powerful, the ones who will suffer will be the 3 Sacred Academies and Dharma Tiantong. It'll have nothing to do with our Dark Azura Hall. As for Yi Fei, when He Ming thought up to there, a smear of hesitation clearly flashed through his eyes. However, when he thought of the Blood Demon's destructive power to the Dark Azura Hall, he still shook his head in the end. It's a pity for the little guy. However, as the Grand Hall Lord, I can't risk the future of the Dark Azura Hall, so I can only give up on Yi Fei completely. While the Dark Azura Hall was secretly making preparations, 4 powerful figures had already gathered in the sky somewhere in the Dragon Head world. Dharma Tiantong's face was old, but the aura exuding from his body was as unfathomable as the ocean. He glanced at the 3 people beside him. Heavenly Strategy Quasi-Emperor, Divine Martial Quasi-Emperor, Heavenly Tao Quasi-Emperor. Together with me, the 4 of us Quasi-Emperors will strike together. This time, we'll definitely eliminate that little demon Yi Fei and avenge my grandson, Fa Wu Dao. There's also Qin Weiyang, Lu Rufeng, and Hua Qianqiu. These are the most outstanding saints of our Sacred Academy, the future hope of our Sacred Academy. Now that they've been killed by a piece of trash abandoned by the heavens, it's truly a great humiliation to us. However, please give me some face and let me be the first to kill Yi Fei. A gleam flashed through the eyes of the Fire Dragon Quasi-Emperor. He didn't come this time to avenge Hua Qianqiu, but because the Quasi-Emperors of the Heavenly Tao Sacred Academy had accidentally discovered that the Grand Oblivion Tao that Zhao Yu cultivated had a fatal flaw, and this flaw was Yi Fei. Chapter 1343. Exposed. Of course, the Fire Dragon Quasi-Emperor wouldn't tell others his goal. Thus, on the surface, he was still filled with hatred, acting as if he wanted to take revenge for Hua Qianqiu. His hatred infected the Heavenly Book Sacred Academy's Quasi-Emperor Han Feng. Qin Weiyang was the disciple I was most satisfied with. He was humble, kind, and loved his junior brother. He had a high chance of becoming a pillar of my Heavenly Book Sacred Academy. Yet, he died at the hands of that trash Yi Fei. I can't tolerate this. I must kill this person to take revenge for my disciple. Take revenge for your disciple? The Heavenly Book Sacred Academy is clearly afraid of Yi Fei's rise and purposely killed him in advance. Who in the 3 Sacred Academies doesn't know about being humble and kind? Qin Weiyang is jealous of talent. As long as there is a slight chance of surpassing him, he will think of ways to suppress or even assassinate him. Finally, Lu Rulong curled his lips in disdain at Han Feng's pretense. If there was someone here who truly wanted to take revenge for his disciple, it would be Fa Tiantong. Lu Rulong didn't really want to take revenge for Lu Rufeng. Instead, He wanted to protect the reputation of the Divine Martial Sacred Academy. He didn't want to suffer losses because of Yi Fei. Everyone had their own goals. On the surface, the four quasi-emperors seemed to be very friendly. They even greeted each other as fellow Taoists. Fa Tiantong, who was anxious to take revenge for his grandson, didn't have much patience. After exchanging greetings, he immediately looked at Han Feng and said, "Old brother Han, your Heavenly Book Sacred Academy's Heavenly Book art specializes in prediction. Quickly help this old man predict where that bastard Yi Fei is hiding. Once we kill him, the legalism school will definitely reward us greatly." Han Feng proudly cupped his hands and said humbly, "Old Patriarch Fa is too polite. Even if you didn't ask, I would find that bastard's whereabouts and eliminate him." After saying that, Han Feng made a hand gesture and used the Heavenly Book Sacred Academy's most mysterious and complicated Heavenly Book art to quickly predict Yi Fei's location. At this moment, Yi Fei did not know that there were already 4 quasi-emperors keeping an eye on him. There were even people using secret techniques to deduce his whereabouts. However, due to his intuition towards danger, Yi Fei felt restless during his cultivation. This was especially true when the blood demon suddenly fell silent after roaring for a while. He did not release any demonic energy to attract people to deal with him, nor did he disturb his cultivation. This blood demon made Yi Fei feel even more dangerous. Could it be that this old devil is also plotting something and wants to plot against me? Yi Fei secretly raised his guard. Coincidentally, Yi Fei had cultivated another deity that sat cross-legged in his spirit. Together with the deities he had cultivated previously, Yi Fei had cultivated 115 deities. As long as he could refine 5 more gods, he would be able to break through to the 8th level of the God of Battle Path. However, Yi Fei did not dare to break through to the 8th level of the God of Battle Path easily. Once he broke through, his God of Battle Path and Battle Demon Path would both reach the 8th level at the same time. There would be a conflict between them unless he could fuse the power of despair for the 5th time. Fusing the power of despair for the 4th time almost killed me. I definitely cannot attempt to break through until the very last moment. Fortunately, he was only 1 step away from breaking through to the 8th level of the God of Battle Path. If he wanted to break through, he could do so at any time. However, to be safe, Yi Fei hurriedly activated the True Spirit 9 transformations and concealed his aura in advance to prevent the Heavenly Tao from discovering him. Then, Yi Fei decided to scare the blood demon in his body. After all, he had destroyed the blood demon's physical body during the previous heavenly tribulation. This time, if he acted as if he was about to undergo another heavenly tribulation, it was very likely that the blood demon would be so scared that it would leave his body on its own accord. Yi Fei said in a low voice, "Blood demon, I'm giving you one last chance. Get out of my body and we can discuss this. Otherwise, I'll trigger the heavenly tribulation and we'll all risk our lives together." Saying this, Yi Fei purposely revealed a crazed expression. The blood demon was so frightened that the consciousness in his blood trembled. He knew how crazy Yi Fei could be when he risked his life. Most importantly, not only did Yi Fei risk his life, but he also often forced others to do the same. His methods were extremely dirty. If Yi Fei had threatened him a day earlier, the blood demon might have considered leaving Yi Fei's body for safety reasons. However, it was different now. The blood demon had already discovered that 4 powerful boundary emperors were flying towards him rapidly. This gave him a glimmer of hope. This little demon really thinks that I'm easy to scare. When the 4 boundary emperors arrive, he won't even be able to escape in time. If he can still cultivate, I'll change my surname to his. The blood demon continued to remain silent and his eyes became even colder. After all, he was an ancient demon god. Even though he was very afraid of the undying sword soul, he was still a demon god. However, during this period of time, The blood demon had also cunningly discovered that Yi Fei seemed to be unable to unleash the full power of the indestructible sword soul. The blood demon had even deduced that given Yi Fei's strength, the maximum power he could unleash was 100,000th of the indestructible sword soul's power. Furthermore, he could only unleash it once. After unleashing it, Yi Fei would need at least a month or even longer before he could unleash it again. This immediately gave the blood demon an opportunity. When the 4 boundary emperors arrive, as long as any one of them can force this kid to unleash the indestructible sword soul to protect himself, I'll have a way to suppress his consciousness and take control of his body again. When that time comes, I'll use 1,000, no, 10,000 ways to torture him to death. The blood demon's consciousness exuded a sinister aura. This sinister aura even caused Yi Fei's blood to turn cold. Yi Fei's expression changed. The blood demon is acting so strangely. He must be plotting something against me. However, under the indestructible sword soul, he doesn't even dare to show himself. How can he plot against me? Not good. Suddenly, he thought of a possibility. The blood demon couldn't plot against him, but he could use others to do so. The blood demon's actions must have attracted the attention of the experts. Even though Yi Fei didn't sense any experts approaching, he still subconsciously communicated with the beast mark space and quickly said, "Xiao Qiao, quickly sense if there's anything dangerous around us." Xiao Qiao rubbed his eyes. He was very unwilling to be woken up by Yi Fei. Yi Fei was very depressed to find that while he was repeatedly plotting against the blood demon, Xiao Qiao and the dragon turtle were actually sleeping. In fact, they seemed to be sleeping very soundly. However, Xiao Qiao still quickly woke up when he heard Yi Fei's voice. Then, a look of fear suddenly appeared on Xiao Qiao's face, and he began to squeak loudly. Xiao Qiao spoke and gestured very quickly, but Yi Fei still quickly understood what Xiao Qiao meant. What? There are 4 quasi-emperors coming this way? They aren't quasi-emperors from the Sunluo Hall. Could it be? Suddenly, Yi Fei remembered what Fa Wudao said before he died. The legalism school wouldn't let him go. Then what about the 3 sacred courts? Would they also blame the deaths of Lu Rufeng and the others on him? Damn, no wonder the blood demon is so quiet. He's deliberately stalling for time and wants to use those quasi-emperors to plot against me. Almost at the same time that Xiao Qiao reminded him, Yi Fei no longer cared about whether he would be exposed. He immediately rushed into the sky at his fastest speed and even used the 100ly instant to rush into the distance. The blood demon looked at this scene in shock. What is this brat hiding in the human emperor's seal? How did he discover that quasi-emperors were secretly approaching? The blood demon immediately released a strand of divine sense, wanting to rush into the beast mark space. However, the beast mark space that Yi Fei could easily let his divine sense enter was like an iron wall to the blood demon. Not only was the blood demon's divine sense unable to enter, but it was also shattered on the spot. The shattering of his divine sense immediately enraged the blood demon. Yi Fei, where are you running to? As long as I'm here, you will definitely be exposed. Boom. Chapter 1344. Great war against quasi-emperors, boundless demonic, might spread out in all directions. Naturally, such a horrifying demonic nature could not escape the eyes of the 4 quasi-emperors. The expression of the heavenly book Holy Academy's Han Feng changed abruptly. He quickly formed hand seals and said, "Oh no! That Yi Fei discovered us approaching and wants to flee. Flee. Even if he flees to the ends of the earth, this old man will kill him and pay for my grandson's life." Fa Tiantong's eyes turned scarlet. The instant he sensed the demonic qi, a huge fate wheel appeared under his feet. Then, he stepped on the fate wheel and charged into the distance. Lu Rulong and the Hualong exchanged glances, and did not hesitate. The instant they discovered Yi Fei fleeing, the four quasi-emperors simultaneously used the teleportation that only martial monarchs could use. Yi Fei immediately sensed a horrifying aura approaching him at lightning speed from behind. His complexion immediately paled. He had not expected the teleportation of quasi-emperors to be so terrifying. Earlier, Xiao Chao had sensed that these quasi-emperors were 500 kilometers away. In the blink of an eye, Yi Fei saw a huge fate wheel appear above his head. Then, that fate wheel was like a ferocious wheel, mercilessly smashing down on Yi Fei's head. If this fate wheel struck, even a mountain might be smashed to pieces. Yi Fei's expression immediately turned extremely grave. In the instant he executed the 100 Li technique, while escaping for his life, he released the Tai Chi domain without thinking. He used all his strength and slashed out 12 Tai Chi sword diagrams. This was also the limit of what he could release. Rumble. The 12 Taiji sword diagrams formed 12 layers of Taiji defense and clashed with the fate wheel in the sky. The huge fate wheel was immediately blocked in the sky, unable to descend. This vile spawn can actually fight against a quasi-emperor? Fa Tiantong was incomparably shocked. Then, he was filled with crazy jealousy. In his opinion, the reason Yi Fei could become so strong with the heaven-abandoned body definitely had something to do with Yi Fei refining Xiao Chao. That Lingji girl is a life-extending item that I spent a lot of effort to find. Fa Wudao is the strongest genius of the legalism bloodline. In the future, it is very likely that he will break through his bloodline and become a top genius, or even a peerless genius. Yet you actually killed him and destroyed the hope of my school of legalism. Unforgivable. The moment his fate wheel was blocked, Fa Tiantong flew into a rage. His fate wheel became stronger and brighter, like a bright moon falling from the sky. Bang! The 12 layers of the Tai Chi diagram collapsed one after another. In the end, the fate wheel fell to the ground and turned the area within a radius of 30 miles into a black lake. Yi Fei's figure also rushed out from the edge of the lake. He did not dare to turn his head back. Even if he had a combat prowess that was 7 levels higher than him, he could at most fight an early-stage quasi-emperor. The legalism ancestor's strength had clearly surpassed the early quasi-emperor level. Even if Yi Fei broke through to the 8th level of the War God Dao, he might not be a match for the legalism ancestor. The only thing he could do was to run as fast as he could. However, the blood demon obviously would not let Yi Fei escape just like that. Yi Fei, you can't escape. If you don't want to die, hand over your body. I can use the power of the demon god to instantly defeat these 4 ants. The blood demon tempted him evilly. Shut your dog mouth. Yi Fei was furious. If it weren't for the blood demon constantly controlling his blood and affecting his speed, he would not have been able to escape. A quasi-emperor would definitely not have been able to easily discover and hunt him down. Sooner or later, he would have to find a way to kill this demon. Yi Fei had already made up his mind. Suddenly, a terrifying shadow appeared above his head. Upon closer inspection, it was actually a huge mountain peak. Heaven Path Ultimate Technique, Overturning Sky Seal. Boom! The giant seal was like a mountain, crashing down with a loud bang. Suddenly, it was like a crouching mountain range dragon, and also like an insurmountable towering city wall, blocking Yi Fei's path. Under the Heaven Path, all are ants. Yi Fei, do you think you can escape? On the overturning sky seal, the fire dragon quasi-emperor exuded the aura of the Heaven Path. His eyes were cold and filled with disdain. Evil creature, you killed my disciple, Qin Wuyang. Did you ever think that this day would come? Before Yi Fei could reply, another furious roar came from behind. Han Feng rode on the demonic bull. His face and body exuded a murderous aura that turned into a terrifying hurricane. Then, the demonic bull suddenly broke away from Han Feng. It stood up and turned into a black iron puppet with a bull's head. The huge puppet charged at Yi Fei, wanting to kill Yi Fei instantly. "You guys are too unreasonable." Yi Fei was furious. The blood demon was clearly the one who killed Lu Rufeng and the others, not him. These quasi-emperors did not even give him a chance to explain. They attacked him the moment they saw him. 8th Division Heavenly Dragon. Yi Fei roared out the Heavenly Dragon's 8 notes. However, he was shocked to discover that a blood dragon had appeared behind him. The huge blood dragon flew out and collided with the demonic bull, causing an earth-shattering sound to ring out. Then, the demonic bull shattered into pieces. The blood dragon was actually unharmed. Damn it, that's the 8 extremities heavenly dragon that I failed to complete. It even contains my blood demon's domain. That was a complete domain. Now Yi Fei had benefited. If the blood demon could spit out blood, he would definitely spit out one. 5 liters of blood. What kind of evil technique is that? It actually destroyed the mechanical demonic bull that I spent my entire life building. Han Feng was shocked. He could not believe it. No matter what evil technique it is, this brat must die. Lu Rulong's aura was like a dragon. He suddenly attacked. A deity appeared behind him. It held a battle axe and chopped at the blood dragon. With a thought, Yi Fei suddenly urged the remaining 7 demonic dragons to charge at the demonic bull together with the blood dragon. They started fighting with Lu Rulong's deity. "You're courting death." Lu Rulong was furious. The deity behind him became even more sacred and resplendent. It was like a war deity wielding a huge battle axe. It killed all 7 demonic dragons. Only the blood dragon raised its head and roared. Its killing intent was boiling. It pounced forward and cracked the deity. Yi Fei also gasped. The immemorial celestial skill is actually so powerful. It should be known that this was an incomplete immemorial celestial skill, but it was already comparable to the unique skills of the Sacred Academy. Seeing this, the blood demon was even more regretful. He regretted that he did not eliminate Yi Fei's consciousness in a hurry to cultivate the immemorial celestial skill. It increased Yi Fei's combat strength for nothing. "Let's attack together and kill this demon." Fa Tiantong suddenly roared. The fate wheel in his hand suddenly turned into a terrifying blood moon. The blood moon then turned into an even more terrifying blood wheel of fate. He raised it to the sky, but the sky could not bear it. The space began to shatter. Heavenly strategy demon subduing. Han Feng's face was gloomy. He suddenly swooped down from the sky. His huge fist was entwined with countless runes, forming a terrifying vortex of runes. It directly hit the blood dragon's body. In an instant, it sealed the unstable blood demon's domain inside the blood dragon. The fire dragon quasi-emperor took advantage of this opportunity. He suddenly slapped out a huge palm. In his palm, there was an illusory heavenly seal. He slammed it down hard. The blood dragon that was fighting with Lu Rulong's deity could no longer hold on and shattered with a loud bang. Bang! Yi Fei's golden body of the 8 demonic dragons also completely collapsed. As a result, his aura became much weaker and his heart sank. Chapter 1345. Consummation Quasi-Emperor. Also at this moment, the Fire Dragon Quasi-Emperor, the only one who did not make a move, suddenly sent a voice transmission to Yi Fei. "Yi Fei, this seat will give you a chance. Get over here immediately, kneel before this seat, and cripple your own primordial spirit. This seat will forgive your sins and even bring you to the Heavenly Tao Sacred Academy." Cripple my own primordial spirit and forgive my sins? What a great Heavenly Tao Sacred Academy. Do these quasi-emperors really think that I am a pushover that anyone can pinch? Yi Fei was enraged. Suddenly, he released the purple gold Tai Chi and sent out 12 Tai Chi sword diagrams, charging at the Fire Dragon Quasi-Emperor. "You overestimate yourself." The Fire Dragon Quasi-Emperor laughed sinisterly. Suddenly, he sent out several palm strikes. A sky overturning imprint blocked Fa Tiantong and the other 2. Then, another sky-overturning imprint coldly slammed into Yi Fei. The fire dragon's goal was very simple. He wanted to severely injure Yi Fei. It would be best if he could cripple Yi Fei and bring him back to the Heavenly Tao Sacred Academy to force Zhao Yu to kill him. At this moment, the fire dragon naturally would not take Yi Fei's life. However, the fire dragon clearly underestimated the defensive power of Yi Fei's Tai Chi domain. After the purple gold Tai Chi was destroyed by the sky-overturning imprint, Yi Fei suddenly activated the war demon golden body. Boundless demonic might burst out from his body. At this moment, Yi Fei had undoubtedly become the most horrifying war demon. He held the spirit-devouring sword in his hand and suddenly thrust it forward ferociously. Boom! The whistling sword light completely shattered the huge mountain range that the fire dragon stood on. However, it did not injure the fire dragon. Instead, it paused for a moment when the sword light struck the fire dragon. Blood demon! Yi Fei was enraged. This should have been a perfect attack. It was unexpected and could definitely cause the fire dragon to suffer greatly. However, at the crucial moment, the blood demon suddenly reversed the flow of Yi Fei's qi and blood, causing an opening to appear in his sword. Even so, Yi Fei's horrifying defense and perfect sword strike still caused the fire dragon Quasi-Emperor to break out in a cold sweat. Then, a huge rage appeared on the fire dragon's body. A Quasi-Emperor was nearly injured by a martial sage. This was a humiliation. 10 sky-overturning imprints. Rumble! The fire dragon Quasi-Emperor no longer held back. In his anger, he even forgot about the order to capture Yi Fei alive. He only wanted to smash Yi Fei into a pulp to appease his anger. Fire dragon, what's wrong with you? Fa Tiantong and the other two had also destroyed the sky-flipping seal and were rushing over from afar. Their expressions were unfriendly. If not for the fire dragon stopping them, they would have killed Yi Fei immediately. When they saw Huolong suddenly attacking Yi Fei, they were naturally shocked. They felt that Huolong's attitude was a little strange. However, the three of them did not let go of this opportunity. Fa Tiantong struck again. This time, he raised his fate wheel with both hands. The fate wheel was like a blood moon that hung in the sky and then fell from the sky. Lu Rulong was a towering figure with a battle axe in his hand. Wherever the axe passed, the void was destroyed and heaven and earth were torn apart. Finally, Han Feng also threw out a punch. He looked dignified, like a Vajra subduing demons. The resplendent fist light actually brought out a strange scripture that shattered the sky and destroyed the demon. Brat, what are you waiting for? Quickly use the undying sword soul. The sword soul can block their attacks. The blood demon suddenly roared in exasperation, as if he was thinking for Yi Fei. In response, Yi Fei only sneered. He was even more hesitant in his heart. If he used the sword soul, how could he suppress the blood demon? However, if he did not use the sword soul, it would be difficult for him to face one Quasi-Emperor. If 4 Quasi-Emperors attacked him together, he would definitely die. Bang! Just as Yi Fei was hesitating, suddenly, a huge divine dragon appeared in front of him. Its huge body suddenly collided with the sky-flipping seal of the Heavenly Tao Sacred Academy. Both sides were destroyed. Then, a vermilion bird with terrifying flames that lit up the sky swooped down. It formed a whistling fire pillar that sent Fa Tiantong and the huge blood moon fate wheel flying. Roar! At the same time, a white tiger sprinted over from the ground. Then, it leaped up high and pounced in front of Lu Rulong's deity statue. Its sharp claws nearly tore the deity statue in half. Finally, a giant black tortoise walked forward with heavy step. Even though the earth was shaking and the mountains were shaking, it did not move an inch. It took Han Feng's heavenly strategy demon fist head-on and sent Han Feng flying with his fist. Han Feng's expression changed immediately. True martial 4 symbols. Fa Tiantong's eyes turned green. True martial sacred academy. Xiangqing, how dare you stop me? The fire dragon's face was ferocious. When he saw the old man who suddenly appeared in the sky, there was a hint of fear in his fierce expression. Even Lu Rulong took a deep breath and looked coldly at the old man. Shi Yingqing, not only did Yi Fei betray the 4 sacred academies, but he also killed the saints of the 3 academies. This person has committed a heinous crime. Why is the true martial sacred academy protecting him? It's the 3rd dean. Yi Fei looked at the person who came and was a little shocked. Then, he felt touched. So many boundary emperors in the Sunluo Hall had given up on him. In the end, it was the boundary emperor of the true martial sacred academy who saved him. He took a step forward and wanted to say something. However, he found that his voice was choked with emotions. The 3rd dean also turned around and smiled at Yi Fei. There was encouragement and strong expectation in his eyes. Then, he raised his hand and pointed at Yi Fei. Yi Fei has never betrayed the sacred academy. He has always been a disciple of the true martial sacred academy. Who dares to bully a disciple of our academy? Boom! At this moment, the 3rd dean's old figure became incomparably tall. He emitted an invisible pressure that made one's heart palpitate. The fire dragon's expression suddenly changed. This old man has broken through again. He is now a peak boundary emperor. Peak boundary emperor. Han Feng took a deep breath. Lu Rulong's expression also showed a trace of fear. Although the boundary emperors of the true martial sacred academy were old, they were all very powerful. Fa Tiantong suddenly laughed. His tone was filled with hatred and murderous intent. He said sternly, Shi Yingqing, do you know what this little bastard has done? He actually killed the most outstanding genius of my school of legalism. You have committed such a grave mistake, yet you still want to protect him. Old dog of legalism, bullshit. The one who killed Fa Wudao and the others wasn't me. It was the blood demon who controlled me in my body. He is the murderer. Moreover, Fa Wudao and the others clearly wanted to kill me together. Are they the only ones allowed to kill me and I'm not allowed to retaliate? With the support of the 3rd dean, Yi Fei immediately regained his confidence and hurriedly came out to explain. He didn't want to be the scapegoat for Blood Demon, but what answered him was Fa Tiantong's voice, which was scarier than a ghost's. Nonsense. You killed my grandson. If I don't kill you, where will the dignity of my school of legalism go? Yi Fei, do you think quibbling will work? Today you must die. Lu Rulong's tone was cold. Han Feng also nodded proudly and said coldly, What is your status? What is the status of the saint of the sacred academy? Even if Qin Wuyang and the others wanted to kill you, you deserve to die. However, you actually killed Qin Wuyang. This is your fault and you deserve to die. Chapter 1346. Fight. The 4 quasi-emperors looked indifferent. Yi Fei's life and death had nothing to do with them. However, if their disciple died, they had to do something. Feeling the cold attitude of the 4 people, Yi Fei suddenly realized that explaining so much was purely a waste of saliva. Shi Yingqing's expression was also cold. He looked at Yi Fei coldly and said, This is the martial world. Yi Fei, do you understand? I understand. Without strength, there is no dignity. In the face of power, we should not talk about reason, but iron fists. Yi Fei took a deep breath. This lesson taught him once again how cruel the world was. Shi Yingqing's expression softened. He suddenly scolded, Bastard, since you understand, why don't you run? Even if I attack, I can only hold them off for 15 minutes. Boom. As he spoke, Shi Yingqing's body emitted the roar of a dragon, a tiger, a vermilion bird and a black tortoise. This was the true 4 aspects of true martial. A single technique could suppress the 3 sacred institutions and the legalism patriarch. Yi Fei understood that the true martial sacred institute was the only one that had declined. The sacred institute's techniques would never decline. Xing, you old bastard! You were hiding something! The fire dragon quasi-emperor was furious. A dragon's roar came from his body. A divine dragon with intense flames appeared and started fighting with Xing's true martial divine dragon. The fire dragon quasi-emperor was also using the 4 aspects of true martial, but it was not complete. Xing was furious when he saw the divine dragon released by the fire dragon quasi-emperor. Fire dragon, you evil disciple! If I knew you had evil intentions, I would have killed you instead of taking you as my disciple. Hearing Xing's words, Yi Fei was shocked to discover that fiery dragon quasi-emperor was the 3rd Dean's disciple. Later, when the true martial sacred institute had declined, Fiery Dragon and many other young martial emperors had betrayed the sacred institute and joined the other sacred institute. Fiery Dragon had broken through to the quasi-emperor realm because of that. Ha ha, Xing, you're old. I'm old too. Let's settle our grudges before we die. A bright moon appeared behind Fa Tiantong. His vast energy shattered the sky. With his fate wheel in hand, Fa Tiantong dashed over from afar and joined forces with the fire dragon. Kill. Lu Rulong and Han Feng looked at each other. They were not willing to give up and tried to break through the 4 aspects of true martial to kill Yi Fei while Xing was busy fighting. Xing suddenly roared. His body was no longer old. Instead, he exuded a youthful aura. Accompanied by the roars of dragons and tigers, as well as the roars of the vermilion bird and the black tortoise, the true martial 4 manifestations suddenly gave birth to 4 terrifying gods. A deity with a dragon head and a human body. A god with the head of a tiger and the tail of a leopard. Was God to God with aspects was? A god could control a snake and a turtle. Kill ye! The 4 aspects of the true martial divine dragon roared at the same time and used a secret killing technique that Yi Fei had never seen before. Murderous aura surged in the sky and the sky suddenly became dark. Only the 4 aspects of the true martial divine dragon were like heavenly gods as they killed everywhere. The fire dragon, Fa Tiantong, Lu Rulong, and Han Feng were forced to retreat, unable to resist. The 4 aspects of true martial are so strong. This might be part of some primordial heavenly art. Blood Demon was very knowledgeable and could see the origin of the 4 aspects of true martial at a glance. Yi Fei was also very shocked. However, before he could take a closer look at the complete 4 aspects of true martial, Xing's angry scolding could be heard from afar. Brat, if you don't get lost now, are you going to stay here and wait for death? Don't let that brat get away. Xing doesn't have much time left. Hang in there for a while. We'll kill that old man first and then Yi Fei. The fire dragon roared. He was a traitor of the true martial sacred academy and also did not want to see the academy rise again. Fa Tiantong, Lu Rulong, and Han Feng had the same thoughts. Under the strong pressure of the 4 aspects of true martial, the fire dragon released a divine dragon that turned into a huge sky-turning dragon seal and blasted forward. Han Feng also used all his strength to perform the heavenly strategy demon fist. As his fist punched out, countless words appeared in the void and formed a beautiful scripture. Kill! Lu Rulong suddenly roared. He unleashed the descent of divine martial to the extreme and formed a dazzling deity. He held a golden battle axe and attacked the 4 aspects of true martial. Heavenly Fate Wheel. Fa Tiantong raised his fate wheel high and shattered the clouds in the sky. It attracted a terrifying starlight that blasted forward and blocked the attack of the 4 aspects of true martial. Obviously, the strength of these 4 aspects of true martial were not ordinary. Even when facing Xing, who was a perfection boundary emperor, they could still counterattack and even wait for an opportunity to kill him. Seeing this scene, Yi Fei suddenly felt a sense of fear. If he retreated like this, he might not be able to see the 3rd Dean, this respectable old man, after 15 minutes. When I was controlled by the blood demon, more than 10 aspects of Sun Luohal, including Hall Master He Ming, who thought highly of me, gave up on me in the end. When I was being chased by 4 aspects of true martial and my life was hanging by a thread, it was the aspects of true martial Sacred Academy that risked their lives to save me. Which was lighter? Which was more important? Yi Fei's gaze suddenly turned resolute as he watched the battle between quasi-emperors in the sky. This time, he couldn't back down, he couldn't back down. I once said that if the Sacred Academy did not betray me, I will not betray the Sacred Academy. Third Dean, thank you for your help, but this time, I will not leave you behind and escape alone. At most, I will fight with these 4 aspects of true martial. Yes, fight. This strong voice flashed across Yi Fei's mind. 15 minutes was enough for him to do many things. For example, he could condense the last 5 deities in his soul. This was the only way he could save Xiangqing's life and defeat these 4 shameless aspects of true martial. No, what are you doing? Yi Fei, you have to calm down. Seeing that Yi Fei did not escape and instead sat cross-legged on the ground with a crazed expression, the blood demon suddenly felt an inexplicable sense of fear. He began to control Yi Fei's blood with all his might, causing Yi Fei's blood to flow backward and causing him to vomit blood. However, Yi Fei was really determined this time. No matter how the blood demon tortured his body, Yi Fei still gritted his teeth and used these 15 minutes of precious time to resolutely take the last step of the War Divine Tao. In the end, the 5 deities were formed almost at the same time. Then, Yi Fei officially stepped into the 8th level of the War Divine Tao. Roar. There was a demon howling in his body, and a deity roaring in anger. A huge purple-gold deity shadow furiously rushed out from Yi Fei's body. Chapter 1347. Heaven's Punitive Expedition. Yi Fei, are you tired of living? Who allowed you to come up here? I am saving you, not asking you to die in battle with me. Xiangqing was furious. If Yi Fei died, what was the point of his sacrifice? Third Dean, thank you for your care. However, please leave the rest to me. Yi Fei rushed to Xiangqing's side with a furious God's will. Then, he suddenly punched Xiangqing and sent him flying like a meteor. Wah, you stinking brat, how dare you sneak an attack on me? Xiangqing was so angry that he was about to go crazy. He was a great circle quasi-emperor and yet, he was sent flying by Yi Fei with a single punch. Although Yi Fei had sneaked an attack on him, it also showed how terrifying Yi Fei's current combat strength was. The 8th level of the God of War path was enough for him to possess combat strength comparable to an ordinary quasi-emperor. Seeing Yi Fei's actions, the 4 quasi-emperors were shocked. Then, Fa Tiantong's eyes were filled with disdain. It's just a heavenly tribulation. It can scare a martial emperor but not us quasi-emperors. Humph, it's just a heavenly tribulation triggered by a mere martial sage. We have even passed the martial emperor tribulation. Why should we be afraid of a small heavenly tribulation? Lu Rulong's face was filled with disdain. He felt that Yi Fei was really stupid to think of using a heavenly tribulation to scare them quasi-emperors. However, soon, the 4 quasi-emperors were shocked to see a demonic god shadow with dense demonic qi rush out from Yi Fei's body. This demonic god shadow roared wildly at them. You bunch of pigs, what nonsense are you spouting? Hurry up and kill this brat. Don't let him pass the heavenly tribulation. Otherwise, the appearance of the blood demon shocked the 4 quasi-emperors. Fa Tiantong suddenly exclaimed, could it be that what Yi Fei said was true? The one who killed Wu Dao was not him but the demonic god hidden in his body. Fa Tiantong, have you gone senile? The one who killed Wu Dao and the other quasi-emperors was Yi Fei. It's this bastard. He still wants to use the heavenly tribulation to threaten us. Huolong was furious. Han Feng and Lu Rulong were also enraged. They turned a blind eye to the blood demon and continued to blame the deaths of Lu Rufeng and the others on Yi Fei. Fa Tiantong understood that the three sacred institutes wanted to kill Yi Fei and not give the true martial sacred institute a chance to rise. He didn't expose them. After all, destroying the true martial sacred institute was beneficial to the legalists. The four quasi-emperors exchanged glances. They did not even look at the blood demon that rushed out of Yi Fei's body. Instead, they took advantage of the fact that Yi Fei sent Shi Yingqing flying. The four quasi-emperors suddenly attacked at the same time, unleashing their strongest martial techniques, wanting to take this opportunity to kill Yi Fei. In response, Yi Fei only sneered. Previously, he still felt a little guilty about pulling others into his tribulation. However, when he saw the shameless actions of the four quasi-emperors, he only felt cold in his heart. The true Spirit 9 transformations was instantly unlocked. The four quasi-emperors, who were about to join forces to kill Yi Fei, suddenly felt an immense fear. This fear didn't come from the enemy, but from the heavens. Boom! The heavenly Tao was furious. Tribulation clouds appeared. In an instant, this shattered world had turned into a sea of lightning tribulation. Lightning flashed everywhere, and there was terrifying lightning everywhere. Yi Fei bitterly discovered that the heavenly tribulation that appeared after fusing with the power of despair for the fifth time was no longer an ordinary lightning tribulation. It was a sea of lightning. As this sea of lightning appeared, the sound of a huge drum that shook time and space suddenly came from the void. It was a war drum and also a thunder drum. The rumbling of the drum was like thunder. In an instant, Yi Fei and the four quasi-emperors were all beaten down from the sky. In the face of a heavenly tribulation, even a quasi-emperor would not be able to withstand a single blow. The most terrifying thing was that this was not a real heavenly tribulation, but merely the heavenly might that was released before the heavenly tribulation formed. Then, when this heavenly tribulation was completely formed, how terrifying would its power be? Yi Fei didn't know, and the four quasi-emperors didn't know either. Shi Yingqing, who was sent flying, looked at the sea of lightning in the sky in a daze. He had lived for hundreds of years and had seen all kinds of heavenly tribulations, but for Yi Fei to turn the heavenly tribulation into a sea of lightning as soon as it appeared, he had never even heard of it, let alone seen it. The blood demon, who was hiding in Yi Fei's body, suddenly screamed, "Heavens, how could this be a heavenly tribulation? How could this be a heavenly tribulation?" Boom! The blood demon's words shook Fa Tiantong and the others, making them feel dizzy. The heavenly Tao punitive expedition to punish disloyal subjects. This kind of heavenly tribulation is difficult to encounter even for the geniuses of the demon god race. How many sins did this brat commit to attract the heavenly Tao's punitive expedition? Hearing the blood demon's words, Fa Tiantong and the others' faces suddenly turned green with anger. Yi Fei was so depressed that he vomited a mouthful of blood. "I only went through a tribulation and tricked a few people, but it actually attracted the heavenly Tao's punitive expedition? Heavenly Tao, you're too unfair." Yi Fei was enraged. He roared angrily at the sky. Sensing Yi Fei's provocation, the heavenly Tao became even more furious. What appeared before everyone's eyes was not just a sea of lightning, but also a heavenly lightning palace that was slowly taking shape in the void. Then, the rumbling of thunder shattered the void. Countless heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals made of lightning kept walking out of the heavenly palace. Yi Fei looked at the martial emperors and heavenly soldiers walking out in horror. There were also quasi-emperors and heavenly generals. He suddenly felt like crying. The path of despair could really make one feel completely hopeless. When he saw the 100 lightning soldiers and generals coming out of the heavenly palace, Yi Fei's hair started to turn numb. The first heavenly tribulation was already so ferocious. How was he going to withstand the remaining heavenly tribulations? "Yi Fei, quickly let me take control of your body." The blood demon suddenly roared angrily. In order to prevent any misunderstandings, he even explained loudly, The Heavenly Tao's punitive expedition is the Heavenly Tao's greatest test for the demon god tribe. Not only will there be martial sages and martial emperors, there might even be martial emperors and martial gods in the end. We must destroy the heavenly palace before these beings come out. What? Martial gods might emerge from the Heavenly Tao's tribulation? Fa Tiantong's voice was loud and clear. However, when he heard the blood demon's words, his voice suddenly became as soft as a mosquito's. Lu Rulong, Hualong, and Han Feng's faces twitched violently. They first looked at Yi Fei with hatred. Then, Hualong, who was the first to react, suddenly roared loudly. He wanted to rush out of the range of the heavenly tribulation as fast as he could. Kill. A cold and emotionless voice suddenly echoed in everyone's hearts. Under the heavenly palace, 1/5 of the 100 heavenly soldiers and generals immediately launched a punitive expedition against Hualong Yi Fei. I hate you. Chapter 1348. Soul of Jinwu Boom. The huge heaven-flipping seal was shattered, and so was Hualong's body. Only Hualong's broken origin spirit rushed out of the broken body in terror. Then it flew out of the range of the heavenly tribulation and disappeared. Fa Tiantong and the other two stared blankly at the scene. Hualong wasn't the strongest among them, but he wasn't the weakest either. Even so, Hualong couldn't withstand the Heaven General's halberd. His physical body crumbled on the spot, and he only managed to escape with his broken primordial spirit. How is this crossing a tribulation? This is clearly suicide. The path of despair is indeed terrifying. This is not a path for humans. No, I can't wait to die here. The heavenly way is punishing this man who has been abandoned by the heavens, not quasi-emperors like us. Escape, I have to escape. Lu Rufeng was so scared that he almost lost his mind. When he saw that the fire dragon had successfully escaped, he made up his mind and rushed out of the lightning tribulation from the other side. The heavenly generals of Tian Ke immediately sensed it. Soundlessly, a huge lightning hammer smashed into the distance. Not only did it shatter the deity behind Lu Rulong, but it also smashed half of his body. Lu Rulong let out a miserable cry as he dragged half of his body and crawled out of the range of the lightning tribulation. Fa Tiantong and Han Feng looked at each other. Suddenly, they joined hands and rushed out of the heavens tribulation. Kill. The two heavenly generals suddenly charged down from the heavenly palace with 2/5 of their forces. Their awe-inspiring spears transformed into boundless lightning that pierced forward. Save me! Han Feng suddenly roared. He was the weakest of the four. At this moment, 2 heavenly generals were targeting him. Kill. All of a sudden, Fa Tiantong turned around. His huge fate wheel glowed with cold light. Instead of coming to Han Feng's rescue, Fa Tiantong slapped Han Feng to the soldiers in the sky with his fate wheel. Puff! Countless lightning spears instantly shattered the body and soul of this quasi-emperor, Han Feng. Suddenly, the only sky general who hadn't made a move in the sky had picked up his weapon. It was a giant lightning bow. Boundless lightning gathered as Fa Tiantong rushed out of the lightning tribulation. There was a loud explosion. The heaven and earth outside the thunderbolts, together with Fa Tiantong's huge fate wheel, were destroyed and turned into a mass of horrifying nothingness. Yi Fei felt weak at the knees. However, after seeing the miserable state of the 4 quasi-emperors facing the heavenly Tao tribulation, Yi Fei instantly made up his mind. No matter what price I have to pay, I must shatter that heavenly barrier before the martial emperor's heavenly soldiers come out. Kill. He mustered his courage and took advantage of the moment when the heavenly generals were scattered to suddenly charge out. However, he did not escape the lightning tribulation. Instead, he charged directly into the sea of lightning in the sky, as well as the heavenly palace formed by lightning in the sea. Lunatic, you lunatic! You are no match for me. Give your body to me. Only a demon god like me can survive such a heavenly tribulation. The blood demon roared madly in Yi Fei's body. He was afraid that he would be implicated if Yi Fei failed to survive the heavenly tribulation. Shut up. Of course, Yi Fei was not foolish enough to let the blood demon take control of his body. He continued to use the indestructible sword soul to suppress the blood demon, while he suddenly charged toward the bow-wielding heavenly general. Kill! The heavenly soldiers were enraged and let out silent roars. In an instant, a military formation was formed. The heavenly general coldly raised his lightning bow and gathered the boundless lightning in the sea of lightning. Boom! In the next moment, a bolt of lightning blasted over. Sensing the aura of death contained in the bolt of lightning, Yi Fei suddenly took out his spirit-devouring sword and slashed out 12 layers of the Taiji sword diagram to protect himself. Bang! The bolt of lightning and the Taiji sword diagram collided. In an instant, it tore apart Yi Fei's Taiji sword diagram and then slammed into Yi Fei's body. Purple gold Taiji. Yi Fei's entire body was glowing. The purple gold light formed an even more dazzling Taiji ball to protect his body. The bow-wielding heavenly general seemed to be stunned. The military formation formed by the heavenly soldiers had already raised countless lightning spears and mercilessly pierced them. Bang! The purple gold Taiji ball only lasted for a breath before it was shattered. Just when Yi Fei thought that he was going to be seriously injured, a bloody demon with 3 faces and 6 arms suddenly rushed out of his body. It held 12 terrifying blood sabers in its hands and charged forward in a frenzy. The lightning spears that were piercing toward him were smashed into pieces. Yi Fei was surprised by this. He had used the indestructible sword soul to suppress the blood demon, but this demon still dared to come out and court death? I am not helping you. I am helping myself. Break that heavenly barrier immediately. Otherwise, when the martial emperor heavenly soldiers are formed, we will all die. There was a hint of fear in the blood demon's tone. This was also the reason why he chose to help Yi Fei. After all, the two of them were now one. Yi Fei was being attacked by the heavenly Tao and the blood demon could not escape. Only by combining the strength of the two of them might they have a chance of surviving the heavenly tribulation. Blood demon, you have finally done the right thing. Knowing that he still needed the blood demon's strength, Yi Fei did not want to get rid of the blood demon now. Kill! He suddenly switched from defense to offense and charged toward the high and mighty quasi-emperors and heavenly generals in front of the heavenly barrier. However, at this moment, loud thunderous roars came from all directions. A lightning halberd pierced through the void and charged toward Yi Fei. A terrifying lightning saber shattered the void and slashed toward Yi Fei. Suddenly, a patch of darkness appeared above his head. That was a heavenly general wielding a huge lightning hammer and smashing it down from above. As the 4 quasi-emperors either died or fled, the other heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals turned around and charged over, surrounding Yi Fei and the blood demon. Yi Fei could not help but reveal a look of despair. He knew that with his strength, there was no way he could be a match for so many lightning soldiers. The blood demon suddenly roared, "What are you waiting for? Quickly use your sword soul. Your sword soul can destroy everything, including these heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals." This was the second time the blood demon had tempted him to use his sword soul. Yi Fei was very hesitant about this. Then, an old voice shouted in his ear, "Yi Fei, no matter what happens, never believe the words of the demon god. Never be tempted by the darkness. What is a true martial? Moving forward courageously and persevering in oneself. This is a true martial. When a real man is alive, live vigorously and die with dignity. What is there to be afraid of?" Boom! Xiangqing's words were like morning bells and evening drums that shook Yi Fei's soul. Then, he saw an old figure charge into the death zone of the heavenly tribulation with an imposing aura. Then, he faced the 4 returning heavenly generals alone. Yi Fei's eyes suddenly became moist. He finally understood what choice he should make. So what if the heavenly Tao attacks me? No one can block my path, and the heavenly Tao cannot destroy it. My path is right under my feet. Ha ha ha, this is what a disciple of the true martial sacred court should be like. When we live, we should be spectacular. When we die, we should also die heroically. Then, we should live without regrets. Xiangqing laughed heartily, then coughed up a large mouthful of blood. He was facing off against the 4 heavenly generals alone. The situation was naturally extremely dangerous, but even so, he still chose to charge in. Chapter 1349. Sword Spirit Slashes the Heavens Roar. Within the heavenly tribulation, a divine dragon roared, a white tiger roared, a vermilion bird danced in the air, and a black tortoise advanced with its head held high. This was the true martial realm. Live brilliantly and die heroically. So what if it was the heavenly tribulation? So what if it was the heavenly Tao's conquest? The heavens can punish humans. Humans can also conquer the heavens. Going against the heavens to conquer the heavens. This is the true martial realm. Third Dean, I understand now. In the past, I was too afraid of the heavenly tribulation and only knew how to use all sorts of methods to avoid it. But now I won't. I want to conquer the heavens, I want to be the god of war. Kill. Yi Fei charged forward. He was no longer confused or afraid. It was just the heavenly tribulation. If he could not defeat it, how could he defeat those exceptional geniuses? How could he defeat gods and demons? As for the blood demon's bewitchment, Yi Fei completely ignored it. There was only one voice in his heart, and that was to conquer the heavens and destroy the heavens that obstructed him. Rumble! The heavenly Tao seemed to have sensed it, and the thunder in the sky suddenly became agitated. The surrounding heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals released terrifying lightning from their bodies. What? Under this lightning, Yi Fei's determined figure swayed like a willow branch. The heavenly soldiers in the sky drowned him, and the endless lightning swallowed him up. However, Yi Fei's will did not waver. He turned back and took one last look at Xiangqing, who was fighting the 4 heavenly generals. His gaze became crazed like never before. If the third Dean can charge into this land of death to save me, then why can't I destroy this heavenly tribulation to save the third Dean? I will also take a firmer step on this path of despair. Kill. Yi Fei started to roar. Then, he suddenly started to run amidst the lightning. Countless heavenly soldiers formed from the heavenly tribulation, forming army after army as they charged forward. However, Yi Fei ignored them all. The martial sage-level heavenly soldiers were not his target. With a whoosh, he heard the terrifying sound of an arrow whistling by his ear. This time, Yi Fei didn't dodge. His body was covered in lightning, and his body was almost charred black. He resolutely slashed at the heavenly general. The heavenly general was expressionless. Countless heavenly soldiers had already surrounded him, forming rows of solid meat shields to prevent Yi Fei from approaching. But at this moment Yi Fei smiled. He had brandished the yin-yang sword. The gigantic Taiji sword diagram suddenly split apart in front of the countless heavenly soldiers. Like a black and white yin-yang fish, it cleverly passed through the densely packed heavenly soldiers in front of it. In the blink of an eye, it merged in front of the bow-wielding heavenly general, emitting a loud explosion. The bow-wielding heavenly general finally revealed a stunned expression. Then, the body formed by lightning shattered with a loud bang. Kill! Yi Fei, you lunatic! If you don't want to live, don't drag me down with you. Behind Yi Fei, a terrifying demon god with 3 heads and 6 arms appeared. But the demon god was not in a good state. The blood demon couldn't control Yi Fei's body to fight. He could only rely on his consciousness to fight. He had to protect Yi Fei from the surrounding heavenly soldiers so that his body wouldn't be destroyed and implicate him. He also had to resist the thunder and lightning in the sky. The blood demon was in a lot of trouble. In the short time that Yi Fei had killed the bow-wielding heavenly general, 2 of the blood demon's 6 arms had already shattered. 7 of the 12 blood knives had also shattered. If this situation continued, the blood demon's consciousness might be completely destroyed even without Yi Fei's help. This was something the blood demon couldn't tolerate. At this moment, the blood demon even had the thought of escaping Yi Fei's body. But before he could make a decision, the heavenly general died in battle. The sea of lightning boiled and the heavenly palace shook. It was as if the heavenly Tao was enraged. It was as if the thunder god was roaring. Another imposing figure appeared amidst the endless lightning in the heavenly palace. That figure took a step forward, and the entire heavenly palace shook violently. The blood demon's lofty consciousness shrunk like an egg. He trembled and roared in fear, "That's a martial emperor! If you kill a quasi-emperor or heavenly general, another martial emperor or heavenly general will come out to kill you. If you kill a martial emperor, another martial god or heavenly general will come out to kill you." The heavenly Tao sent out a punitive expedition to punish those who disobeyed. This was the most terrifying part of the heavenly Tao tribulation. When they saw the foot stepping out of the heavenly palace, not only did the blood demon's expression change, Yi Fei's expression also changed. However, it was not fear, but a strong desire to fight. So what if it's a martial emperor? As long as I destroy the heavenly palace before the martial emperor comes out, even the heavenly Tao can forget about subduing me. Boom! As if the heavenly Tao tribulation sensed Yi Fei's consciousness, the sea of lightning was no longer surging. Instead, it stirred up horrifying waves. The impassioned war drums had already turned into a terrifying heavenly sound, causing the sky and earth to shatter completely. At this moment, there was no longer just a foot stepping out of the heavenly palace. At the same time, there was also a martial emperor's hand that contained boundless lightning. It's over. The martial emperor is about to come out. This is the heavenly Tao tribulation that even we demonic gods fear. The blood demon's tone was horrified. However, when Yi Fei did not notice, a ferocious light suddenly flashed in the blood demon's eyes. Similarly, in front of the blood demon, Yi Fei's gaze, which seemed to be staring at the heavenly palace, changed from hesitation to incomparably cold. The third Dean charged into the heavenly tribulation to save me. I absolutely cannot let the third Dean die because of this. I must shatter the heavenly palace's gates. Kill. Yi Fei ignored the surging sea of lightning, which left horrifying wounds on his body. He also ignored the surrounding lightning, which charred his flesh and bones, revealing his white bones. Yi Fei unsheathed his sword. What he unsheathed was not the spirit-devouring sword but the undying sword soul in his body, which contained boundless destructive aura. The sword soul slashed the heavenly palace. Boom! Boom! Even though it was only 100,000th of the destructive sword light, it formed a horrifying destructive sword river. The sword river surged and instantly split the boundless sea of lightning in half. The furious roar of the martial emperor came from the heavenly palace, which was hidden above the sea of lightning. It sounded like the heavenly Tao was enraged. A general's head, which flickered with lightning, struggled out of the heavenly palace. Its thick arms and legs, which were made of terrifying lightning, howled as they smashed toward the sword river that Yi Fei had slashed out. At this moment, Yi Fei suddenly became very nervous. At this moment, the blood demon's ferocious expression also became uncertain. Then, the surging destructive sword river mercilessly shattered the hand and leg that the martial emperor had stretched out. Only the general's head of the martial emperor let out a furious roar that sounded like the heavenly Tao. It was completely submerged in the destructive sword river. Success. The blood demon looked at the destroyed martial emperor and the martial emperor in shock. 100,000th of the undying sword soul's power was already enough to destroy half of the martial emperors and shatter the heavenly palace. How terrifying would the power of 100,000th or 1,000th be? Chapter 1350. Lightning Fiend God, Great Blood Demon Fusion. The blood in his body began to boil. The blood demon had been waiting for Yi Fei to exhaust his undying sword soul and destroy the heavenly palace. His huge demonic body transformed into a huge blood python. He opened his huge mouth and tried to swallow Yi Fei. Yi Fei immediately felt a tearing pain in his body. At this moment, his consciousness was also being suppressed by an extremely cold and cruel pressure. No, it was not as simple as being suppressed. It was being completely devoured. This blood demon wants to devour my consciousness, take my body and my sword soul. Yi Fei's face flashed with coldness and killing intent. He had never let his guard down against the blood demon. He also knew that once he released the undying sword soul, the blood devil would definitely use every means at its disposal to erase his consciousness and take over his body. But he had to destroy the undying sword soul. Only by destroying the heavenly palace and stopping the heavenly General Wu from coming out could he destroy this heavenly tribulation and save himself. He was also saving the life of the third Dean, who had sacrificed his own life to save him. But Yi Fei had to be on guard against the blood demon. Turning his head, Yi Fei watched the destruction of the heavenly palace. The 4 heavenly generals and heavenly soldiers were gradually collapsing. He smiled with relief. Then, his gaze became even more ferocious than the blood demon's consciousness. It was also even more insane. Boom. Just as the heavenly palace was destroyed by the sword soul and the blood demon was about to devour his consciousness, Yi Fei did something that scared the blood demon out of his wits and stunned Shi Yingqing. He actually dashed into the celestial palace at the same time it was destroyed. Lunatic. You damned lunatic, you actually tricked this god again. The blood demon let out an extremely miserable shriek. His voice was worse than a pig being slaughtered. It was more miserable than a beggar's. It was only then that the blood demon realized in horror that Yi Fei had actually held back when he destroyed the celestial palace. Yi Fei had not completely destroyed the celestial palace. Instead, he had only allowed the undying sword soul to destroy half of the celestial palace and the heavenly General Wu, who was about to leave. Then, just as the blood demon was about to devour his consciousness, Yi Fei sprinted into the remaining half of the heavenly palace before it collapsed. Boom! At this moment, the celestial palace trembled. From the broken celestial palace, a terrifying sound of thunder could be heard. All the celestial soldiers and the 4 celestial generals, who were on the verge of collapse, suddenly turned into terrifying balls of lightning and charged at the celestial palace from all directions. Then, the sea of lightning boiled. At this moment, all the lightning and thunder turned into a terrifying torrent of lightning. Like rivers returning to the sea, they poured into the half-destroyed heavenly palace at the same time. From afar, the place where Yi Fei and the celestial palace had been turned into a terrifying whirlpool of lightning. Endless lightning and thunder filled the surroundings. With the fury of the heavenly Tao, it seemed like it wanted to destroy the celestial palace along with Yi Fei. Damn it! From the whirlpool of lightning, the blood demon's furious roar could be heard. The blood demon suddenly regretted taking over Yi Fei's body. In reality, this kid in front of him was a complete lunatic who did not care about his own life. When others encountered the heavenly Tao tribulation, they would tremble in fear, afraid that they would be surrounded by the heavenly Tao tribulation. Yi Fei, on the other hand, rushed directly into the celestial palace formed by the heavenly Tao tribulation when he realized that he was about to be taken over. It was as if he had jumped into a terrifying lightning pit. Endless lightning immediately turned into a destructive whirlpool of lightning. When Yi Fei stepped into this whirlpool, his foot was already charred black. The boundless electric light in the surroundings had turned it into charcoal. The excruciating pain made Yi Fei's face contort, but his eyes were still filled with madness. I want to live an exciting life. Even if I die, I want to die a heroic death. Blood demon, come and devour me. Let's conquer the heavens together and crusade against this unfair heavenly Tao. I walked the path of despair with my own ability. Why should the heavenly Tao interfere? Boom. As if sensing someone's disrespect, a terrifying destructive consciousness gradually awakened in the celestial palace. Sensing that consciousness, the blood demon, who was still struggling desperately to break free, suddenly shrunk into a ball in fright. Martial God, that's the martial God Heavenly General. He's about to awaken. Let me out. I want to leave this lunatic. I don't want to be destroyed. It's too late. Blood demon, haven't you always wanted to take over me and obtain a sword spirit? I'll give you this chance. Come and devour me. Yi Fei roared. Countless deities suddenly rushed out of his body. These deities were formed from his soul and contained a portion of his consciousness. More than 100 deities rushed out at the same time. They rushed directly to the mouth of the blood python formed from the blood demon's consciousness. This was no different from Yi Fei sticking out his head and letting the blood demon chop it up. If the blood demon opened his mouth, he would be able to devour Yi Fei's consciousness completely. However, the blood demon didn't dare to open his mouth, nor did he have the energy to do so. Endless lightning had already surrounded them. Within the broken celestial palace, a terrifying gaze stared coldly at the two of them. With just a gaze, the blood python that the blood demon had transformed into was suddenly pierced through. Then, countless bolts of lightning gathered from all directions and once again dealt an unimaginable destructive blow to the blood python's body. Battle of the 8 Desolations. Yi Fei, I'm going to fight you to the death. The blood demon roared angrily. He realized that he was completely trapped in this terrifying lightning vortex and couldn't escape. The blood demon suddenly reverted to his 3-faced, 6-armed battle form. At the same time, he was filled with hatred and extreme regret. His entire consciousness rushed towards Yi Fei. However, although the blood demon was fast, the lightning vortex returning to the celestial palace was even faster. Before the blood demon could reach Yi Fei, endless lightning bolts had already bombarded the blood demon's consciousness. The blood demon's 6 arms exploded with a loud bang. 3 heads collapsed at the same time. Finally, the huge demon god's body was directly melted into a puff of black smoke by the endless lightning bolts. The blood demon was annihilated on the spot. Until his death, he was filled with grievances and resentment. He felt the blood demon's hatred before his death and saw how terrifying the lightning vortex was. The madness in Yi Fei's eyes subsided. Then, all the hair on his body stood on end. Without thinking, he hurriedly opened the purple gold taiji. Bam! Suddenly, a cold gaze came from the celestial palace, just like how it dealt with the blood demon. This gaze was emotionless, but it shattered the purple gold taiji with just a glance. Then, endless lightning bolts gathered again. They wanted to mercilessly destroy Yi Fei, just like the blood demon. Chapter 1351. Grief and hatred. Yi Fei did not rush into the celestial palace out of impulse. Instead, he made this crazy decision after careful consideration. After all, the blood demon was too strong. He was facing a demonic god that had lived for tens of thousands of years. If not for the suppression of the undying sword soul, he would not have been a match for the blood demon. Yi Fei only thought of using the heavenly tribulation to get rid of the blood demon once and for all. As for how he was going to get out of this dilapidated celestial palace after killing the blood demon, he did not have the time to think about it. He could only take one step at a time. Since he wanted to kill the blood demon, he would have to take a huge risk. The risk I have to face is to resist the lightning returning to the celestial palace. If I can survive, I will be able to survive the heavenly tribulation. If I can't, I will be destroyed. Yi Fei's eyes gradually became determined and resolute. After the blood demon was killed, Yi Fei no longer had any worries. He sat down cross-legged in the middle of this terrifying lightning vortex. At the same time, a dark golden sword shadow radiated from his body. Although Yi Fei could not activate the destructive power of the sword soul, he could still use the basic functions of the sword soul. For example, he could use the large amount of immortal energy stored in the sword soul to heal his injuries. As long as my recovery speed can keep up with the speed of the heavenly tribulation destroying me, I will have a chance to survive this heavenly tribulation. Yi Fei closed his eyes and ignored the lightning and thunder that were even more terrifying than the furnace. The undying sword soul also immediately released all of its undying power, which continuously flowed into his body. At this moment, Xiao Chao and the dragon turtle in the beast mark space became very nervous. Yi Fei's face was also contorted in pain. The lightning in the lightning vortex was too terrifying. Although the celestial palace was damaged and the martial emperors, martial gods and heavenly generals in the depths of the celestial palace did not appear, any martial emperor or martial god would be able to destroy a martial emperor. However, just this stretch of lightning could turn any quasi-emperor who entered into it into ashes. If not for Yi Fei's physical body being as tough as an emperor weapon, a quasi-emperor with a weaker physical body would have been turned into barbecued meat and charred coal in a few breaths. Even so, when he walked into the vortex, Yi Fei's body had already turned pitch black, just like charcoal. Half of his flesh was charred black, while the remaining half emitted the aroma of roasted meat. This feeling of being roasted made Yi Fei extremely depressed. Fortunately, he had stored a large amount of undying power in his undying sword soul. Relying on the undying power's super recovery ability, the endless lightning of the lightning vortex was unable to completely destroy him. Boom! At this moment, an icy cold gaze came from within the celestial palace. It stared coldly at Yi Fei. Although that gaze did not make a move, following his gaze, the surrounding lightning that returned suddenly turned from lightning as thick as an arm to terrifying lightning pillars as thick as a water bucket. These lightning pillars continuously bombarded Yi Fei's body from all directions. Its might was already comparable to that of the martial monarch tribulation that many martial sages underwent. Xiangqing stood on the ground and stared blankly at the terrifying scene in the sky. When faced with a heavenly tribulation, all the cultivators in the world would do the same thing. They would use all sorts of methods to block it. If they could endure it, they would succeed. Like Yi Fei, they would directly charge into the heavenly tribulation and risk their lives. This scene would probably scare a martial emperor to death. At the far end of the sky, He Ming also led the Sunluo Hall's quasi-emperors to stare at the lightning vortex in the sky with a complicated expression. It was so terrifying that even the quasi-emperors feared it. In the end, He Ming sighed and led the Sunluo Hall's quasi-emperors away quietly. Faced with such a terrifying lightning tribulation, he no longer believed that Yi Fei could survive. Under normal circumstances, that was indeed the case. Even if Yi Fei had the undying energy and could recover instantly, the lightning vortex seemed endless. No matter how much undying energy Yi Fei had, there would be a time when it would run out. In reality, Yi Fei had only resisted for about an hour before he discovered that the undying energy stored in his sword spirit had been completely depleted. Furthermore, the surrounding lightning vortex was still terrifying. He estimated that only 1/10 of the undying energy had been depleted. This is bad. How am I going to survive the remaining 90%? Yi Fei blinked his eyes in pain. In the next moment, the boundless lightning pillars struck him again. His face twisted and his body turned into charcoal. The faint fragrance of meat drifted in the air. However, at this moment, as if sensing the danger of its host, the undying sword spirit suddenly released a terrifying suction force. It caused Yi Fei's charred body to turn into a horrifying black vortex. In turn, it absorbed the power of the lightning vortex. Yi Fei was dumbfounded. After a while, he recalled that the undying sword spirit seemed to have unconsciously absorbed the power of the lightning tribulation when he was facing his tribulation in the burial land of the gods. How could I forget? The greatest use of the undying sword soul isn't its destructive sword chi, but rather the undying sword soul. It can absorb any energy in the world. The lightning tribulation is also a type of energy. The undying sword spirit can obviously absorb it as well. Boom! This shocking thought flashed through his mind. At this moment of life and death, Yi Fei did not have time to think too much. His entire consciousness was already immersed in the sword spirit. He loudly ordered, "Undying sword spirit, absorb all of this lightning tribulation." 1. The sword spirit vibrated and actually emitted an excited emotion. It seemed to have a special liking for the undying sword spirit. In the past, Yi Fei could not control the sword spirit. It could only rely on its instincts to absorb a small amount. But now, with Yi Fei's control and command, the undying sword spirit immediately showed its terrifying power. Then, the undying sword spirit formed a terrifying vortex of destruction in Yi Fei's body. This vortex was even more terrifying than the lightning vortex Yi Fei was in. The lightning vortex only wanted to destroy Yi Fei and return him to the imperial palace. However, the vortex of destruction formed by the undying sword spirit actually wanted to absorb all of the remaining power of the lightning tribulation. Its boldness caused the dilapidated imperial palace to shake. The gaze inside seemed to carry the anger of the heavenly Tao. But it could not be helped. The imperial palace was already half destroyed. The heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals inside could not be formed to attack Yi Fei. The cold gaze could only see Yi Fei, who was about to be destroyed, suddenly treat the lightning vortex as spiritual chi and madly absorb it. As the endless lightning tribulation was absorbed by the undying sword spirit, Yi Fei was pleasantly surprised to find that not only was the surrounding power of the lightning tribulation unable to harm him, a portion of the absorbed power within the undying sword spirit turned into destructive sword chi to replenish the sword spirit. The other portion turned into a golden liquid that was slowly released from the sword spirit. It repaired his body faster than the undying sword spirit. In less than an hour, Yi Fei's charred body quickly scabbed over and fell off, revealing new golden skin. Excess golden liquid from the surrounding lightning bolts splashed out from the lightning pillars and fell to the ground like rain. That is lightning tribulation liquid. It is the spiritual liquid of heaven and earth that can prolong one's life. And it is a treasure that can only be formed by chance during the lightning tribulation. Xiangqing stood on the ground and looked at the golden liquid that suddenly fell from the lightning tribulation. Suddenly, he was filled with pain and hatred. He suddenly had the urge to slap Yi Fei to death. This prodigal son of AB*TC. That is lightning tribulation liquid. It is a treasure that can prolong one's life even after 1,000 lightning tribulations. He actually did not know how to collect it and allowed it to fall. Xiangqing swore that if he had such a prodigal son, he would beat him to death on the spot. Then, as if his eyebrows were on fire, he recklessly rushed up and collected the falling lightning liquid. Chapter 1352. Back to the Holy Court. Yi Fei knew nothing about this. He continued to cultivate in the lightning tribulation. The heavenly tribulation, which was enough to destroy a martial artist, suddenly became a land of treasures in Yi Fei's eyes. A land of treasures that belonged only to him. Even though the lightning of the heavenly tribulation was very scary, the destructive aura of the heavenly tribulation was completely absorbed by the undying sword soul. Then, the power of the heavenly tribulation was released through the undying sword soul in the form of golden lightning liquid. Yi Fei only absorbed the lightning tribulation liquid for an hour. He was shocked to find that the injuries in his body from the heavenly tribulation were completely healed. In the rolling lightning vortex, Yi Fei's body suddenly emitted a dazzling demonic golden light. That was the battle demon way. It automatically circulated and breathed in his body, quickly merging with the golden lightning liquid released by the undying sword soul. The power of the heavenly tribulation can actually allow me to cultivate the power of despair? This shocking thought flashed through Yi Fei's mind. He had never thought that the heavenly tribulation, which represented destruction and destruction, would actually contain a power that was more precious than spiritual energy. Most importantly, he could absorb this power through the undying sword soul. Instantly, Yi Fei's eyes turned red. Xiao Cao's eyes also lit up. Within the beast mark space, a rainbow-colored little tortoise had sneakily crawled out. It hid on Yi Fei's shoulder and stuck its head out to look around. Then, when Yi Fei wasn't paying attention, the tortoise fiercely opened its mouth and sucked in a breath of air towards the surrounding lightning. Boom! Amidst the rolling lightning, much of the golden lightning liquid that had yet to be refined and absorbed by the undying sword soul had already splashed out. Then, a small vine whip impatiently took root and sprouted from Yi Fei's body, rapidly growing into green leaves. These green leaves could directly wrap around the undying sword soul and absorb the power of the heavenly tribulation. This surprised Yi Fei. He felt that Xiao Cao's vine whip was really amazing. It was not even afraid of the destructive aura of the undying sword soul. However, when he saw that Xiao Cao had absorbed 30% of the golden liquid in a single breath, Yi Fei's face twitched violently. Then, without another word, he immediately activated the battle demon path and continued to strengthen the cells in his body, condensing resplendent stars one after another. In the sky, from time to time, parts of the golden lightning liquid that had not been completely absorbed because of the fight between Xiao Cao and the dragon turtle. These were the heavenly tribulation elixirs that Shi Yingqing had seen. This old dean's eyes instantly turned red. He cursed Yi Fei for being a prodigal son while running all over the place to collect the heavenly tribulation elixirs that had accidentally fallen. If even a single drop of it accidentally fell onto the ground, the old principal would be so heartbroken that he would immediately dig it out, along with the soil. Regardless of whether it was useful or not, he would put it in his space belt first. If Shi Yingqing knew that the heavenly tribulation liquid that he regarded as his life was actually being absorbed and refined by Yi Fei and Xiao Cao in the heavenly tribulation like ordinary spiritual energy, he would be devastated. The old principal was definitely going to be heartbroken again. Finally, after absorbing 30% of the golden lightning liquid from the heavenly tribulation, Little Grass patted her round belly in satisfaction. Then, she returned to her little bed made of immortal crystals and fell into a deep sleep. The dragon turtle also burped and spat out terrifying lightning. It slowly crawled back into the beast mark space to refine the energy of the heavenly tribulation. But there was still a limit to the power of the heavenly tribulation. Originally, when Yi Fei destroyed the heavenly palace, the heavenly tribulation should have disappeared. But because Yi Fei blocked the remaining half of the heavenly palace gate, the surrounding lightning could not return to the void, and the heavenly tribulation continued until now. Until the destructive vortex formed by the undying sword spirit absorbed 99% of the heavenly tribulation lightning in the lightning vortex. Indeed, the remaining half of the heavenly palace gate could no longer support the heavenly tribulation. It turned into a flash of lightning and dissipated between heaven and earth. At this point, the heavenly tribulation was completely over. The destroyed heaven and earth returned to normal. Warm sunlight shone through the clouds. Amidst the golden lightning, Yi Fei stood up from where the heavenly palace gate had disappeared. Under the sunlight, his entire body emitted golden light. He was like a golden demon god looking down on heaven and earth. Then, Yi Fei was shocked to see Shi Yingqing shoveling dirt on the ground. Third principal, what are you? Yi Fei didn't understand. You wastrel. Seeing Yi Fei come down, no matter how good Shi Yingqing's temper was, he could not help but point at Yi Fei and scold him. Brat, do you know what fell down just now? That was the heavenly tribulation liquid, the heavenly tribulation liquid that can prolong the lives of quasi-emperors. Not only did you not collect it, you even let it fall and melt into the soil. That is our life. Shi Yingqing was very agitated. Yi Fei was also very surprised. The golden heavenly tribulation liquid that he and Xiao Chao had absorbed could prolong the lives of quasi-emperors? No wonder Shi Yingqing was so agitated. After all, although the quasi-emperors of the true martial sacred academy were powerful, their lifespans had dried up. Not only the quasi-emperors but also the martial emperors. In an era where they could not break through to the martial emperor realm, prolong their lives had become the greatest hope of these old martial emperors and quasi-emperors. Understanding this, Yi Fei suddenly blushed with shame. Just now, during the heavenly tribulation, he and Xiao Chao had absorbed the precious heavenly tribulation liquid like ordinary spirit qi. Fortunately, he had stored a little in his undying sword soul. The third dean was willing to sacrifice his life to save me. If the Sacred Academy did not betray me, how can I betray the Sacred Academy? Yi Fei secretly made up his mind. He directly communicated with the undying sword soul and released a large amount of heavenly tribulation liquid. Then, he used his true essence to condense golden lightning and handed it to Shi Yingqing. Third Dean, you have wronged me. I have actually collected a lot of heavenly tribulation liquid. Good. I was right about you. You didn't take the risk to save you in vain. Shi Yingqing happily praised Yi Fei. Yi Fei was speechless at how quickly the dean changed his attitude. However, when he thought that the heavenly tribulation liquid could indirectly increase the strength of the Sacred Academy, he was happy again. Third Dean, how are my brothers? Yi Fei asked again. Good. They are all good. Even Xia Jun, although not talented, is very diligent. I have high hopes for him. The third dean smiled and held the lightning in his hand. There was a faint excitement in his expression. With this heavenly tribulation liquid, these old quasi-emperors would be able to last longer and protect the Sacred Academy for a longer time. Yi Fei, you have made a great contribution to the Sacred Academy this time. Now, come back with me. I will report to the Grand Dean and reward you heavily. Shi Yingqing solemnly put away the lightning. Suddenly, he grabbed Yi Fei's shoulder and teleported away from this dangerous place. Not long after, the two of them appeared on a desolate black land. Yi Fei sighed when he saw this piece of land. 3 years ago, he had entered the Dragon Head realm from this place. He had narrowly escaped death and experienced the heavenly Tao's suppression. Now, he could finally leave the Dragon Head realm from here and return to the Sacred Academy. He could see his brothers and friends again. Chapter 1353. Gathering. It was still the same land. The people hadn't changed, and the environment hadn't changed at all. Ordinary disciples were struggling to survive. The disciples above the human stage were also constantly climbing in the competition. Some people were constantly retreating, while others were constantly moving forward. This was the real martial Sacred Academy. A cruel Sacred Academy, but also one that Yi Fei felt close to. Only after experiencing the cruelty of the Dragon Head realm did he understand the good intentions of the deans behind the cruel competition of the Sacred Academy. If you don't experience wind and rain, you will never grow. The only thing we can do for the disciples is to let them adapt in advance. This was what the 3 deans said before leaving. Yi Fei now completely understood. I'm finally back. The first thing Yi Fei did when he entered the Sacred Academy was to shout happily. In his opinion, he had done so much for the Sacred Academy. Even if the Sacred Academy didn't line the streets to welcome him, there should be many senior and junior brothers to welcome him warmly. But what made Yi Fei depressed was that the Sacred Academy was as quiet as usual when they heard his voice. There was no lively scene of welcoming him. Instead, many disciples' faces suddenly changed when they heard Yi Fei's voice. Why do I feel that this voice is so familiar? Familiar? This is the voice of Demon Yi. Oh no, the rumor is true. Demon Yi has returned to the real martial Sacred Academy. Who is Demon Yi? Is it the demon Saint Yi Fei who swept away the first stage disciples every time he went down the mountain? Did he come back this time to sweep away the heaven stage? There was no welcome as expected. Instead, the entire real martial Sacred Academy was in chaos. There was no other way. Yi Fei had made too much noise in the Dragon Head realm. Whether it was killing Jean Polai and the others, being controlled by the blood demon, or killing holy sons like Lu Rufeng, every news was enough to shock the disciples of the real martial Sacred Academy. As the name of Yi Fei the demon saint spread in the Dragon Head realm, Yi Fei gradually gained another nickname in the real martial Sacred Academy. That was Demon Yi. Vaguely hearing the discussions of these disciples, Yi Fei felt very embarrassed. He was obviously a low-key and kind person. He had nothing to do with a devil. Maybe it's because I'm too outstanding. Many opponents don't dare to face me directly and can only hurt me in the dark. It must be like this. Everything is because I'm too outstanding. Yi Fei comforted himself like this. He was even more convinced of this. Since no one came to welcome him, he could only helplessly return to his own mountain peak alone. The mountain peak was as familiar as ever. It was a familiar mountain and familiar people. The only difference was that everyone was excited. Big brother, you're finally back. I missed you so much. The most touching one was still Xia Jun. When he saw Yi Fei, Xia Jun was so emotional that he shed tears. Then, without saying a word, he rushed over to hug Yi Fei. Yi Fei was also touched. He stood still and waited for Xia Jun to hug him. But soon, his face darkened as he realized that the person that Xia Jun was hugging wasn't him, but his mentor, Zhou Xiaoyu, who had rushed over after hearing the news. Scram! Zhou Xiaoyu was embarrassed. Of course, she wouldn't let Xia Jun hug her. She kicked out and sent Xia Jun flying. Why am I always the one getting hurt? I just want a hug. What did I do wrong? Xia Jun hung on a tree branch, swaying in the wind. Serves you right. Yi Fei's face darkened as he cursed under his breath. But he couldn't help but laugh. Then everyone laughed. Shang Luo walked over and said with a smile, Yi Fei, I knew you would come back. Yi Fei, if you didn't come back, we would have gone to the Dragon Head realm to look for you, Lin Tianjiao joked. But Yi Fei knew that Lin Tianjiao never joked. If he said he would do it, he would do it. He was a proud man. I saw Fu Renjie. Yi Fei looked deeply at Lin Tianjiao. Lin Tianjiao's expression turned serious, but at the same time, he heaved a sigh of relief. His friendship with Fu Renjie was also very deep. Brother, you are finally back. I don't have to suffer anymore. Little Fatty saw that it was really Yi Fei who had returned. He suddenly cried emotionally. Little Fatty, why have you lost weight? Yi Fei was shocked. Pang Bei used to be very fat. After not seeing him for 3 years, he had lost a lot of weight. But his strength was already the strongest among them. Pang Bei had actually broken through to the half-emperor realm. What was going on? Yi Fei looked at Lin Tianjiao and then at Xia Jun. They were looking at Shang Luo guiltily. Shang Luo blushed and said confidently, I didn't bully him. I just gave little Fatty a special training. Later, Yi Fei found out that after he left, Shang Luo had a strange temper. She took little Fatty with her in the name of special training. She forced little Fatty to turn into a monkey every day. She even found a book on the monkey fist and made little Fatty practice it every day. Shang Luo even had a whimsical idea. She made little Fatty turn into a devil monkey several times and mixed into a group of devil monkeys. She wanted to steal the secret recipe of the devil monkey wine. Little Fatty was seen through by the devil monkey king in the Valley of Life and Death several times and was hunted down. As he ran, not only did he lose weight, but his cultivation level also increased by leaps and bounds. Yi Fei was speechless when he found out what had happened. What made him even more speechless was that when he finally returned, he was not greeted with wine and delicacies, but a table full of spiritual melons. Needless to say, this must be Shang Luo's masterpiece. If you are stingy, just say it. Why did you have to prepare a table full of spiritual melons? Yi Fei was depressed. He imagined that his brothers would drink big bowls of wine and eat big pieces of meat. Do you think spiritual melons are cheap? One piece is worth 100,000 upper-grade spirit stones. Shang Luo rolled his eyes, scaring Xia Jun and the little Fatty. They hurriedly spat out the spirit melon they had just eaten. Lin Tianjiao's face also stiffened. He knew that Shang Luo was someone who would do what she said. Only Yi Fei was calm and composed. Seeing that Shang Luo was joking, Yi Fei directly snatched the spiritual melons from her hand and put them in his hand. Before Shang Luo could react, he threw out a large piece of 10 millennia cold steel and a large number of treasures he had dug out from the ancestral dragon abyss. These things were not very useful to him now, but to Lin Tianjiao and the others, they were very precious cultivation resources. Shang Luo did not have time to argue with Yi Fei. She ran to calculate the specific value of these treasures like a money grubber. Xia Jun and the other two began to fight fiercely. Only Zhou Xiaoyu was eating the spiritual melons in a more reserved manner. But when she saw Yi Fei throw out a large piece of fairy crystals, Zhou Xiaoyu could not hold back anymore. She rushed in and excitedly picked up a large piece. That's great! With these celestial crystals and enough bloodline fruits, any disciple with a special bloodline in the Sacred Institute will be able to upgrade their bloodline and have greater potential, Zhou Xiaoyu said excitedly. Of course, this was also the reason why Yi Fei took out these things. Since he was indebted to the Sacred Institute, he was naturally willing to do his part to make the Sacred Institute stronger. Chapter 1354. Becoming the Saint Sun. Seeing Xia Jun's expression, Yi Fei couldn't help but sigh. Among them, Xia Jun was the one who worked the hardest. He was also the only one who cultivated the immortal Emperor's scripture to the highest level. However, no matter how hard he worked, it would be very difficult to catch up with those geniuses with special bloodlines without any special encounters. Although Xia Jun had reached the 10th level of the martial saint realm in 3 years, Yi Fei knew that this was the limit of Xia Jun's hard work. After all, Xia Jun's talent was limited. He couldn't walk the path of despair. If he didn't have any special encounters, Xia Jun would be left far behind by Lin Tianjiao and the others. Even many human step-disciples of the sacred court might surpass Xia Jun. Thinking of this, Yi Fei's heart suddenly moved. He remembered that the Blood Devil had refined the special bloodlines of Lu Rufeng and the others after killing them. This was also the special gift that Yi Fei had prepared for Xia Jun. Big brother, this blood is. Xia Jun followed Yi Fei into the cave residence in a daze. Then, he stared at the 4 drops of blood in Yi Fei's hand and couldn't move his eyes away. He was a smart person. He faintly felt that these 4 drops of blood could change his life. Yi Fei said in a deep voice, "These are the special bloodlines of Lu Rufeng, Fa Wudao, Qin Wuyang and Hua Qianqiu. Refine 1 drop and you'll have their special bloodlines. Now you can choose one." "I choose one. I can actually have a special bloodline?" Xia Jun was very emotional. He looked at Yi Fei and tears suddenly flashed in his eyes. However, Xia Jun didn't say anything. He only secretly engraved this kindness in the depths of his soul. "Big brother, you've treated me so well. Other than giving my life to you, I have nothing else to repay you." Then, Xia Jun didn't hold back and chose Huaqianqiu's blazing fire bloodline. Why didn't you choose the strongest fate wheel bloodline? Yi Fei was a little surprised. Among the 4 bloodlines, Fa Wudao's was the strongest. If it wasn't for the blood devil, Fa Wudao would have definitely become the strongest of the legalists. Instead, Huaqianqiu's bloodline was the most ordinary of the 4. Xia Jun very rationally shook his head. A tall tree attracts the wind. The fate wheel bloodline is unique to the school of legalism. If I merge with it, I will definitely attract the attention of the school of legalism and bring trouble to my brother. Lu Rufeng and Qin Wuiyang's bloodlines are also unique. On the other hand, Huaqianqiu's raging fire bloodline isn't unique to the Hua family. There are a few earth-grade disciples in the true martial sacred courtyard who also possess this bloodline. Yi Fei nodded. He understood that Xia Jun's words were completely out of consideration for him. Special bloodlines were very precious. The bloodlines of Lu Rufeng and the other 2 were even more of a hot potato. Although these 4 drops of blood were refined by the blood devil, it would easily cause misunderstandings if word got out. It would also cause the quasi-emperors of the 3 sacred academies to hate them. Xia Jun is right. These 3 special bloodlines are too high-profile. It's fine if I take them, but if others take them, it'll only bring trouble to them. Yi Fei was very pleased. He remembered that Xia Jun was still a somewhat absurd young master when he had just left the outer seas. After a few years of experience, Xia Jun had undoubtedly matured a lot. Leaving Xia Jun to silently refine the blazing fire bloodline in the cave, Yi Fei put away the other 3 special bloodlines and walked out of the cave. Young Master Yi, Senior Brother Gongji, and a few other senior brothers have come to pay their respects. Gua Wang silently walked over from a corner. Yi Fei was very satisfied with this subordinate who had sworn to follow him. Gua Wang, did Fa Yihai contact you in the past few years? Yi Fei thought of another follower, Fa Yihai. He was a spy he had placed in the school of legalism. Thanks to Fa Yihai, he was able to avoid the school of legalism's secret revenge a few times. Gua Wang carefully transmitted his voice. Fa Yihai contacted me, but you weren't here, so I didn't dare to make a decision. Also, heaven-rank disciple Cui Yongxian seems to have announced that he's going into seclusion. He won't come out for 10 years. Seclusion? I don't think he's in seclusion. He's just guilty and doesn't dare to meet anyone. Find a way to inform Fa Yihai. I want to see him. Yi Fei ordered. When the heavenly tribulation erupted, he only saw the bow-wielding heavenly general release a thunderbolt arrow and destroy Fa Tiantong's fate wheel. He didn't see whether Fa Tiantong was dead or alive. He also didn't forget that the school of legalism had once tried to kill Xiao Chao. If news of Xiao Chao being by his side got out, that old bastard Fa Tiantong would definitely do everything he could to capture Xiao Chao and refine him into the life-prolonging pill he had always dreamed of. Ever since he followed Yi Fei, Gua Wang's days had been very comfortable. He had a special bloodline and a special talent in algebra. Such a talent would be very popular in any sacred institute. Recently, there were already quasi-emperors who had noticed Gua Wang and expressed their intention to take him in as a disciple. This made Gua Wang secretly glad that he had made the right choice to follow Yi Fei. Therefore, Gua Wang would always do his best to do whatever Yi Fei asked him to do. Junior brother Yi, thank you so much. Without you, we wouldn't be who we are today. From now on, we are willing to follow you and be your followers. Gong Ji was accompanied by a dozen or so middle-aged disciples. They were all people who had gone to the Dragon Head realm to gain experience and had been captured by the Blood Ancestor and turned into blood slaves. They were very grateful that Yi Fei had saved them. Considering their difficulties, the Sacred Institute had made an exception and allowed them to stay in the Sacred Institute to cultivate for another 100 years. Gong Ji and the others were even more grateful. They understood that this opportunity was brought to them by Yi Fei. Therefore, when they heard that Yi Fei had returned, the first thing Gong Ji did was bring along his companions who had once been reduced to blood slaves to seek refuge with Yi Fei. Yi Fei felt very awkward about Gong Ji's request to seek refuge with him. "Senior brother Gong Ji, I'm only an earth-rank disciple. I'm afraid I can't take in too many followers." Most importantly, he had just returned to the Sacred Institute. If he recruited a large group of followers in a high-profile manner, what would the quasi-emperors of the Sacred Institute think? Yi Fei felt that this was inappropriate. Shang Luo was so angry that she wanted to throw a spiritual melon at Yi Fei when she saw that people had taken the initiative to follow him. She jumped over and said, "Yi Fei, you don't want followers, but I do. It just so happens that I need a few coolies." "Coolies?" Gong Ji and the others looked at Miss Shang with some fear. Yi Fei was also speechless when he heard this. He was about to find an excuse to refuse. Suddenly, a hearty voice came from the sky. "Yi Fei, since Gong Ji and the others are willing to follow you, just accept them. Our Sacred Institute doesn't have so many rules. However, you are about to become the saint and should have a group of followers." "Saint? Saint, please accept us." Gong Ji and the others were overjoyed. They didn't have much ability, so they could only think of following Yi Fei to repay Yi Fei's kindness. "Saint? Our real martial sacred courtyard actually has a holy son. It's that demon Yi." The third dean's words were not only directed at Yi Fei, but also at all the disciples of the true martial sacred courtyard. This order once again caused a large group of disciples to be in a state of chaos. Chapter 1355. Tian Fa Quasi-Emperor. Ever since the true martial sacred courtyard fell behind, there had been no holy son. No one knew the reason, but all the disciples knew what it meant for a sacred courtyard to have a holy son. The upper echelons of the sacred courtyard did not intend to hide the fact that Yi Fei had become the holy son. Almost at the same time the three deans announced this, three martial monarchs went to the other three sacred courtyards as messengers to inform them of this news. According to the rules of the four sacred courtyards, no matter which sacred courtyard had a new holy son, the other sacred courtyards would send people to congratulate them. Although the relationship between the four sacred courtyards had been tense in the past 100 years, and they would not come to observe the ceremony, they would still inform each other. When the news reached the divine martial sacred courtyard, Lu Rulong was still recuperating in the sacred courtyard. When he heard that Yi Fei had not only returned to the true martial sacred courtyard but also became the holy son, Lu Rulong's face immediately turned ashen. He looked at the remaining half of his body, and his expression gradually turned ferocious. Soon, his spiritual sense turned into a complete figure. He walked out of the palace where the quasi-emperors were in closed-door cultivation and arrived at a beautiful mountain peak. The mountain peak was like a sword, and the word Lu was clearly engraved on it. This was the place where the disciples of the Lu clan, the other major faction of the divine martial sacred courtyard, cultivated. What? Yi Fei actually became the holy son? No matter what he becomes, I, Huolong, and my heavenly Tao sacred courtyard will not coexist with him. Huolong, who had escaped back to the heavenly Tao sacred courtyard, was in an incomparably miserable state. His physical body was completely destroyed, and only his weak primordial spirit remained. This also startled the other quasi-emperors of the heavenly Tao sacred courtyard. No one expected that after the four quasi-emperors personally made a move, Yi Fei would return to the true martial sacred courtyard safely and become the holy son. However, Huolong, who attacked, almost died. At the same time, in the heavenly book sacred courtyard, the quasi-emperors were in disbelief. They used the heavenly book art to reconstruct the blurry scene of Yi Fei's tribulation. That old bastard Xianqing actually personally made a move to protect Yi Fei. That demon Yi Fei actually attracted the heavenly Tao to suppress him and did not die. This is simply a miracle. Everyone, Yi Fei killed Qin Wuyang first. After that, he killed our heavenly books, Sacred Academy's Quasi-Emperor Han Feng. Now, he's even publicly declared himself the holy son of the true martial Sacred Academy. What do you think? Considering the strength of the legalism school, Fa Tiantong had fled back to the legalism school despite being heavily injured. A portion of the heavenly book Sacred Academy's quasi-emperors chose to forget that it was Fa Tiantong who had killed Han Feng. Instead, they pushed all the blame onto Yi Fei and the true martial Sacred Academy. Who told Yi Fei to be weak? Who told the true martial Sacred Academy to be in decline? Furthermore, if not for Yi Fei, how could the youngest quasi-emperor of the heavenly book Sacred Academy, Han Feng, and the most promising holy son of the heavenly book Sacred Academy fall at the same time in the Dragon Head realm? In short, all of this is that demon Yi Fei's fault. From now on, our heavenly book's Sacred Academy swears to be irreconcilable with demon Yi. A quasi-emperor said, coming to a conclusion about Han Feng's death. The other quasi-emperors nodded. They understood that they needed a scapegoat for Han Feng's death to redeem the heavenly book Sacred Academy's lost face. This scapegoat definitely couldn't be the legalism school, which was still very strong. They could push everything onto Yi Fei and use this to attack and isolate the true martial Sacred Academy. This was undoubtedly the best way. Not long after, a beautiful woman arrived at a majestic small world. This world belonged to the Liu clan. Has grandfather come out of seclusion? I have something important to discuss with grandfather, Lu Qing said with a cold expression. The beautiful face was talking to a statue that was waiting outside the palace. The statue was silent for a while before slowly opening its eyes. Master is inside. Young miss, you can go in by yourself. After speaking, the statue remained motionless like an inanimate object. Lu Qing's expression was still very respectful. Only she and her grandfather knew exactly how powerful this statue was. It was the foundation of the Liu clan. Respectfully avoiding the statue, Lu Qing walked into a very ordinary small courtyard. There weren't many decorations inside, only a stone table and 2 stone chairs. There was a pot of spirit tea placed on top of the table, and an ordinary-looking middle-aged man with a green robe and a small hat was sipping the tea. This person was the Sky Fa Quasi-Emperor Lu Mingyue. He was the youngest quasi-emperor in the entire Middle Ground and also one of the strongest quasi-emperors. It was also this ordinary-looking man who single-handedly caused the decline of the true martial Sacred Academy. Qing do you know why grandfather called you back? The Sky Fa Quasi-Emperor asked indifferently as he took a sip of tea. I heard that the true martial Sacred Academy has a new holy son. I plan to challenge him and completely destroy the true martial Sacred Academy. Lu Qing's calm face was filled with a strong fighting spirit. The Sky Fa Quasi-Emperor smiled bitterly and shook his head. Qing you still don't understand what grandfather means. After all, the true martial Sacred Academy nurtured me. Although they forced me before, I've already killed all those who forced me. After so many years, grandfather no longer cares about grudges. Lu Qing looked at the Sky Fa Quasi-Emperor with some confusion. The latter shook his head and said in a low and solemn voice, the reason why I've been suppressing the true martial Sacred Academy is not because of old grudges from hundreds of years ago. As for the specific reason, I can't tell you because of the oath. But this time, you're definitely not going to challenge the holy son of the true martial Sacred Academy. After a pause, a fiery passion suddenly flashed in the depths of the quasi-emperor's eyes. There was also a trace of anticipation. Your main objective is to test this person, to test his martial Tao and his martial technique. After that, come back and tell me. Test? Lu Qing was even more confused. In her eyes, the true martial Sacred Academy was a declining academy. Even if a holy son appeared, she was confident that she could defeat him. But why was there a hint of fear in his grandfather's tone? But Lu Qing still nodded and respectfully retreated. After leaving the small world of the Lu family, her destination was the true martial sacred academy. Yi Fei had no idea that becoming a holy son would be such a troublesome matter. He actually needed to announce it to the world like an emperor. This is obviously to attract hatred for me. I'm obviously a low-key person. I just need to cultivate in peace and be with my brothers and sisters. Yi Fei felt very depressed, especially when he inexplicably had a large group of followers around him. Although the number of followers also represented the influence of the saint, the number of followers represented the influence of the saint. But Yi Fei didn't want too many people around him. This way, many of his secrets would be easily discovered. By the way, there's still that matter. It's almost time to solve it. Yi Fei suddenly remembered another matter. After settling Gong Ji and the other followers, Yi Fei directly left the mountain and went down the mountain to the area of the Heaven Stage disciples. This immediately attracted the attention of countless disciples. How many days has it been? Demon Yi has come down the mountain again. Chapter 1356. Spy Boom. Yi Fei's descent from the mountain caused a commotion among many disciples. This was also one of the reasons why Yi Fei was depressed. He was clearly such an outstanding person, but his name, Demon King Yi, had actually overshadowed the title of Holy Son Yi. But this is also good. The martial world is cruel after all. If I can't make others respect me, then I can make them fear me and avoid a lot of trouble. Yi Fei arrived at the Heaven Stage area. There were 10 towering mountains there, and on each mountain was a dazzling palace. At this moment, the masters of these palaces were all nervously hiding in their palaces. They were all senior disciples and had heard of Yi Fei's ferocity every time he descended from the mountain. Strange. I'm clearly the Holy Son, not a tiger. Why do I feel like these emperors are all afraid of me? Yi Fei shook his head and withdrew his gaze from the other mountains. Finally, his gaze landed on Cui Yongxuan's palace. Cui Yongxian, are you going to come out yourself, or do you want me to go in? Yi Fei shouted coldly. Inside the palace, Cui Yongxuan's face was red with anger. But when he thought of how Yi Fei had slaughtered the holy sons of the 3 holy courts and the legalism young master in the Dragon Head realm, his face suddenly turned pale. At this moment, Cui Yongxian was already filled with regret. He had once followed the legalism school's orders and tried to assassinate Yi Fei. Now that Yi Fei had become the Holy Son and was even more infamous, Cui Yongxian wouldn't dare to directly clash with Yi Fei even if he had 10 times the courage. Knowing that he couldn't hide, Cui Yongxian quickly opened the palace door and walked out dejectedly. He said dejectedly, Heaven Stage disciple Cui Yongxian greets senior brother Holy Son, slap. Cui Yongxian was answered with a resounding slap from Yi Fei. Cui Yongxian couldn't resist at all. He was already spinning from the slap. Why did you hit me? He screamed and covered his red and swollen face, glaring at Yi Fei with hatred. Slap. Yi Fei did not say a word. He only moved his hand and gave Cui Yongxian another slap. Cui Yongxian resisted with all his might, but it was still the same. Cui Yongxian fell to the ground. At this moment he said coldly, Do you know why I hit you? Because I once offended you. Cui Yongxian covered his face. His eyes were bloodshot. He was a Heaven Stage disciple. How could he survive in the Saint Academy after being humiliated by Yi Fei? Then, Cui Yongxian screamed again. Yi Fei slapped Cui Yongxian hard across the face. He asked again, Do you know why I hit you? Why? Cui Yongxuan's heart was filled with resentment and anger. His tone, however, contained a trace of fear, a trace of grief, and a trace of sobbing. I don't know either, Yi Fei answered confidently. Cui Yongxian was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. Yi Fei hit him for no reason? If that was the case, how was he going to compromise? How was he going to sneak into Yi Fei's team and pry out more of his secrets? You! Cui Yongxian exploded in anger and pointed at Yi Fei. But before he could speak, another crisp slap was heard. Cui Yongxian looked for his teeth on the ground. He knelt on the ground and roared, "Why? Do you think you can bully others as you wish just because you are the saint? No, those who are bullied by me are definitely not from the Saint Academy. I'll give you 10 breath. Get out of here. Don't let me see you again in the future." Yi Fei's voice was very cold. He was like a bully who used his power to bully others. But hearing this, Cui Yongxian was no longer resentful. Instead, he was shocked and frightened. He suddenly understood why Yi Fei hit him as soon as they met. As the saint, his duty was to protect the Saint Academy. But he, Cui Yongxian, was a traitor who betrayed the Saint Academy. Just based on this point, he deserved to be hit. Strange, Yi Fei seems to have discovered that I'm a traitor. But why didn't he expose me? Why did he only chase me out of the Saint Academy? Cui Yongxian stood up from the ground in a daze. He didn't say anything. He turned around and was about to leave. Yi Fei didn't hit Cui Yongxian this time. Instead, he sent a cold voice transmission. "You plotted against me in the past, and I hit you back. We are even now. No matter who you are, you owe me a life. When you return to the Human Demon Palace, you better know what to say and what not to say. Otherwise, if I can hit you today, I can kill you at any time in the future." Human Demon. You! Boom! Cui Yongxian stared at Yi Fei with a horrified expression. He couldn't help but take several steps back. In the beginning, he thought that Yi Fei had found out that he was a spy from the legalists. That was why Yi Fei let him go out of anger and fear of the legalists. Never in his wildest dreams would Cui Yongxian expect Yi Fei to see through his true identity. This identity was Cui Yongxuan's biggest secret. Even the legalists couldn't find out. If it wasn't for the fact that he happened to save Gong Ji's group in the Blood Demon sect and learned that the real Cui Yongxian had died long ago, Yi Fei wouldn't have been able to deduce that Cui Yongxian was a spy from the Human Demon Palace. His sudden attack and perfect timing of Cui Yongxuan's identity really messed up this person's plans. From there, Cui Yongxian was completely exposed. "Yi Fei, you will regret this." Cui Yongxuan's expression suddenly turned cold. He glared at Yi Fei one last time before turning around and fleeing the academy as fast as he could. Even though Cui Yongxian didn't know why Yi Fei didn't expose his identity, he knew that once his identity was exposed, the furious higher-ups of the academy wouldn't just slap him a few times like Yi Fei did. They might even skin him alive and pull out his tendons. Of course, this scene in the eyes of many disciples further proved that Yi Fei was a devil. In just a moment, everyone looked at Yi Fei with fear in their eyes. This was especially true for those who had conflicts with Yi Fei in the past. They were afraid that Yi Fei would come after them. Of course, there were also a few disciples who noticed the abnormality in the conversation between Yi Fei and Cui Yongxian. Their eyes became brighter and brighter as they pondered. "It seems that the appearance of a holy sun in our academy isn't a bad thing." Yes, the previous Heaven Stage disciples were too weak. Only a powerful holy sun like Yi Fei can lead the academy to fight against other academies and emperor-to-be families. Many martial emperors in the martial imperial palace had witnessed the entire conflict. Then, Martial Emperor Xingchen and Elder Lu looked at each other. Cold light flashed in their eyes. From Yi Fei's sudden bullying of Cui Yongxian, they could vaguely see that there was something wrong with this Heaven Stage disciple. These two martial emperors immediately chased after Cui Yongxian when he left the academy. However, they didn't succeed in stopping him. As a spy of the Human Demon Palace, Cui Yongxian was definitely not a simple person. He had hidden a teleportation talisman array on his body. Once it was activated, Even a martial emperor wouldn't be able to stop him. Yi Fei, since Cui Yongxian is a spy, why did you let him go? Lin Tianjiao walked over curiously. Chapter 1357. Saint Pagoda Fu Renjie. Lin Tianjiao's eyes flickered with a hint of worry and excitement. In the northern region, he and Fu Renjie were rivals but also best friends. There's one thing I don't understand. Fu Renjie's yin-yang body is very unique, but it can't be compared to a special bloodline. Why would the human demon palace pay such a huge price and sacrifice a quasi-emperor to make Fu Renjie a demon-breeding heavenly fetus? I have a feeling that things are not that simple, Lin Tianjiao said in a low voice. Yi Fei nodded, his face solemn. That's why I want Cui Yongxian to leave the real martial sacred academy in one piece. Fu Renjie is also a smart person. As long as there's a chance, he will definitely use Cui Yongxian to pass on a message to us. Lin Tianjiao suddenly smiled bitterly and shook his head. Originally, I thought that after awakening the desolate emperor's bloodline, even if I couldn't surpass you, I would at least be able to catch up. Who would have thought that each of you would be more monstrous than the other? You've walked the path of the strongest, and Fu Renjie is even more monstrous. He actually became a demon with a heavenly embryo. In terms of talent, none of us can compare to him. After listening to Yi Fei's experience in the Dragon Head Boundary, Lin Tianjiao was undoubtedly greatly stimulated. As proud as he was, he immediately chose to return to his cave residence and cultivate even more crazily. About a month later, Xia Jun's cave residence was suddenly filled with flames. Those were not ordinary flames, but bloodline flames. After a difficult fusion, Xia Jun finally succeeded in refining Hui Qianqiu's blood essence and obtained a special bloodline. This made him very excited. Big brother, finally, I don't have to drag you down anymore. From now on, I won't hide behind you, but will fight side by side with you. Xia Jun closed his eyes and began to gradually adapt to the special bloodline that was born in his body. At the same time, in the depths of the life and death valley of the real martial sacred academy, there were countless terrifying vicious beasts entrenched here, and no one was allowed to come close. At this time, there was a chubby devil monkey, trembling with fear, approaching a large group of devil monkeys. Many devil monkeys were a little surprised when they saw the fat monkey. Then, they suddenly thought of something and pointed at the fat monkey, spitting and throwing stones. They couldn't wait to tear the fat monkey into pieces. In the depths of the devil monkey territory, a few furious roars quickly sounded. 3 devil monkey half-emperors covered in golden light were already roaring angrily as they charged toward the group of fat monkeys. The fat monkey immediately screamed, I told you I wouldn't be discovered by the devil monkey this time. Sister Shangluo, you lied to me again. I, little fatty, hate monkeys the most. He absolutely could not tie his fate to other factions. Once there were fetters, his hands and feet would be tied, and he would not be able to pursue the pure martial Tao. My martial Tao is pure. I do not want it to be tainted with too much utilitarianism. I hope the principal can understand this. Yi Fei added. His tone was very sincere and firm. Otherwise, he would have sworn to be loyal to Sunluo Temple back in the Dragon Head realm. When he was controlled by the blood demon, the quasi-emperors of Sunluo Temple would not have given up on him so easily. Sigh, silly child. As long as the great era does not arrive, the pursuit of martial artists like us is like a broken bridge. We are filled with hope, but unfortunately there is no path ahead, Shi Yingqing said emotionally. Yi Fei's eyes were filled with determination. If there is no path ahead, then I will open one. Nothing is difficult in this world if one sets his mind to it. I do not know what the great era is like. I only know that in the ancient times before us, there were many martial emperors and martial gods. If they could cross the broken bridge and reach the peak of the martial Tao, then we can too. Well said. Nothing is difficult in this world if one sets his mind to it. No wonder you are the only one who dares to embark on this path of despair. An old and tired voice suddenly rang out in the void. This is the grand principle, the soul of the true martial sacred academy. With him around, no one can defeat the true martial sacred academy. At the same time, it is also the grand principle's intention to hand over the Sage's Tower to you. However, there is a condition to activate the Sage's Tower, Shi Yingqing said. Yi Fei asked curiously, what condition? Chapter 1358. To hate bitterly. Who would have thought that the key to opening the Sage's Tower would be hidden in the true martial sacred hall? Yi Fei sighed as he arrived at the void gate of the true martial sacred hall. He was holding a small white pagoda in his hand. This pagoda was the Sage's Tower, the legacy treasure of the true martial sacred academy. It was said that this was a unique treasure that had been passed down since the era of the true martial sacred emperor. The Sage's Tower has a unique function. It contains a mysterious power that can collect spirit veins. It allows the sages to collect spirit veins for cultivation anytime and anywhere, Shi Yingqing said enviously as he handed over the Sage's Tower. What the middle ground lacked the most right now was spirit veins. However, the fact that the Saint Tower was capable of collecting spirit veins was no doubt a shocking fact. Yi Fei was filled with resentment. If he had the Sage's Tower earlier, he could have used it to collect all the spirit veins along the way back in the ancestral dragon abyss, instead of just letting the dragon tortoise destroy the spirit stones inside. However, with the Sage's Tower, Yi Fei would be able to store the spirit veins he encountered in the future in the Sage's Tower. He would be able to refine them whenever he wanted. This was undoubtedly a joyous occasion. It could also solve the problem of the lack of spiritual energy when he cultivated the power of despair. Of course, although the Sage's Tower had a miraculous function, and the generations of sages had collected a lot of spirit veins, allowing them to have a large number of spirit veins for cultivation anytime and anywhere. However, there was a limit to the Sage's Tower. A key was required to open it. Otherwise, even a martial emperor wouldn't be able to open the Sage's Tower and retrieve the spirit veins inside. This was also the reason why Shi Yingqing didn't need Yi Fei to swear allegiance to the true martial sacred academy before handing the Sage's Tower over to Yi Fei. This was because the Sage's Tower had lost its key. Back then, the Quasi-Emperor Tian Fa battled with the last saint of the sacred academy. Not only did he kill the saint and a quasi-emperor, but he also wanted to snatch the Saint Tower. However, before the saint died, he threw the key to the Saint Tower into the true martial divine hall. The true martial divine hall was the cave abode of the true martial divine Emperor Zhen Wu. Even a martial emperor would not be able to fight his way in. Yi Fei sorted out the information he had obtained in his mind. He understood that the Holy Court was so generous as to give him the Sage's Tower because they wanted to use him to find the key hidden in the true martial sacred hall and open the Sage's Tower. This way, the true martial sacred academy would be able to regain the complete Sage's Tower. As for the spirit veins hidden in the Sage Tower, they were the rewards that the sacred court had given him. However, Yi Fei felt that this was quite good. If he helped the sacred institution would reward him accordingly. This was much easier to accept than pledging allegiance to the sacred institution and losing his freedom. What I need to do now is to enter the true martial sacred hall and find the key to the Sage's Tower. Furthermore, I only have a month. This was also the restriction of the true martial sacred hall. Any disciple who entered the true martial sacred hall could stay for a year on their first visit, a month on their second visit, and a day on their third visit. After the third visit, even a martial emperor would not be able to take a single step into the true martial sacred hall. Therefore, even though he knew that the true martial sacred hall hid the key to the sage's tower, he still did not dare to take a single step into the true martial sacred hall. The true martial sacred academy had sent many experts to search for the key, but due to the limited time, they did not find it. This time, Shi Yingqing was willing to give the sage's tower to Yi Fei because he wanted to let Yi Fei try his luck. After all, Yi Fei had obtained the complete pure truth chapter the last time. This time, Shi Yingqing could not help but have higher expectations. However, the third principal has really found the right person this time. Others might not be able to find the key, but they will definitely be able to find the large blue stone hidden inside. Inside the beast mark space, Xiao Chao swallowed his saliva when he heard Yi Fei mention the large blue stone. Clearly, Xiao Chao found the large blue stone quite delicious after taking a few bites from it last time. Therefore, when Yi Fei entered the Void Gate and was teleported into the true martial sacred hall again, Xiao Chao was already barefooted. He grabbed the dragon tortoise's tail and rushed out eagerly. Squeak! Xiao Chao was undoubtedly very excited to return to the place he missed so much. Most importantly, there was no one else in the true martial sacred hall. Xiao Chao could play here for a while again. The dragon tortoise followed Xiao Chao eagerly, wagging its tail and roaring something. It seemed to be discussing something with Xiao Chao. After all, when Xiao Chao ate the large blue stone last time, the dragon tortoise did not have time to eat it. When it heard Xiao Chao say that the large blue stone seemed delicious, the dragon tortoise also wanted to take a bite. Vaguely understanding the dragon tortoise and Xiao Chao's intentions, Yi Fei immediately sweated and silently expressed his sympathy for the large blue stone. Then, under Xiao Chao's lead, Yi Fei walked towards the palace where the large blue stone was hidden. There were a total of 99 cultivation rooms in the true martial sacred hall. However, there was a hidden 100th room. That was where Divine Emperor Zhen Wu used to cultivate. It was also where the large blue stone was hidden. However, this place was very difficult to find. Unless the large blue stone was willing to let people in, even the Grand Principal of the Sacred Court could not enter. Of course, this was not a problem for Xiao Chao. Yi Fei's words about finding the large blue stone, and maybe she could take another bite out of it, made Xiao Cao's eyes sparkle. She even walked more energetically. Soon, they found the large black door that the large blue stone had purposely hidden. The only thing that annoyed Yi Fei and Xiao Chao was that the large blue stone knew that they were here, but the large blue stone still closed the door and refused to let them in. Senior Bluestone, I'm here to see you again. Quickly open the door and let me in. Considering that he had a favor to ask, Yi Fei could not use force. He could only play the emotional card and pretend to be an acquaintance. As for Yi Fei, the large blue stone hated him to the core. When Yi Fei entered the true martial sacred hall, the large blue stone sensed him but did not say anything. Later, when it saw Xiao Chao directly ignore the concealment restriction, it activated and find the black door without any effort. The large blue stone almost cried. That ferocious little girl is here again. She's actually grinding her teeth. She's such a bully. Not only did she take advantage of me once, she wants to take advantage of me a second time. Does she really think that I'm easy to bully? Inside the black door, the large blue stone cursed madly. Especially when it saw the 2 teeth marks on its body that had not yet disappeared, the large blue stone was so angry that a wisp of black smoke rose from its body. I can't let these 3 scourges in. If I don't show my power, do you really think that this is your own home? That you can come and go as you please? Humph! Suddenly, the large blue stone emitted a layer of emerald green light. Knowing that the restriction on the black door could not stop Yi Fei from opening it violently, the large blue stone turned into a cloud of green smoke and disappeared into the air. At this time, Yi Fei did not get a response after knocking on the door for a long time. He decisively ordered, "Dahe, break open this door." Boom! Chapter 1359. It was too cruel. Senior Greenrock, if you don't open the door, I'll come in myself. Yi Fei was still very polite. He told himself that he wasn't forcing his way in, but that he was too enthusiastic about opening the door. However, this was also related to his desire to see the Green Rock. After all, the Green Rock was the Enlightenment Stone. Emperor Zhen Wu had become the martial god partly because of the Green Rock. I don't expect the Green Rock to follow me. I'll be satisfied as long as I can use it to gain enlightenment and master the immemorial Sky Dragon's 8 extremities technique. This was also the reason why Yi Fei agreed to come in without hesitation when he heard that the key was in the true martial divine palace. He needed to gain enlightenment so that he could master the immemorial Sky Dragon's incomplete immemorial Sky Dragon's 8 extremities technique. After barging into the palace, Yi Fei was familiar with the place. He walked towards the nearby thatched cottage. Behind the thatched cottage, there was a patch of purple bamboo. After he destroyed it last time, a purplish-green bamboo forest had grown out again. The thatched cottage was close to the bamboo forest. It was filled with the aura of nature. Tao of nature. This was Emperor Zhen Wu's cultivation place. It gave Yi Fei a feeling. However, before he could experience this feeling, Xiao Chao had already skipped into the thatched cottage. The dragon turtle followed closely behind. It was full of energy and was ready to attack at any time. The Green Rock wasn't in the thatched cottage. The dragon turtle looked very disappointed. Xiao Chao also looked around in confusion. Although Yi Fei had expected this, his face still twitched. Senior Green Rock is obviously hiding from us. Didn't you let Xiao Chao bite you last time? You're so stingy. Squeak. Xiao Chao was also fuming with anger and had a very unhappy expression on her face. Then, Xiao Chao simply widened her big black eyes and looked up and down, left and right, searching for traces of the big blue stone. After a while, Yi Fei asked expectantly, "Xiao Chao, how is it? Did you find it?" Xiao Chao suddenly bit his finger, and a puzzled expression appeared on his face. Then, Xiao Chao became even angrier. He simply opened his spiritual eye of heaven and earth, and even saw through the layers of space to search for the Big Blue Stone. Big Blue Stone, who was secretly watching this scene, was so frightened that a layer of green cold sweat appeared on his body. He thought to himself in shock, that seems to be the heaven and earth spiritual eye that the God Emperor mentioned when he was alive. This little girl is extraordinarily ferocious. Grandpa Bluestone can't afford to offend her, but I can still avoid her. Ever since Big Bluestone was bitten twice by Xiao Chao, it was completely afraid of this little ancestor. Xiao Chao was still young. She could not be defeated like this and be unable to pull herself together. He hurriedly hugged Xiao Chao and comforted her. "Xiao Chao, don't be discouraged. If we can't find it this time, we will continue to search. True martial sacred hall is only so big, and the Big Blue Stone is the only living thing. As long as we search hard, we will definitely find it." Living thing? Hearing Yi Fei's words, the dragon turtle's shifty eyes suddenly lit up. Then, it immediately roared and said something to Xiao Chao. Xiao Chao hesitated at first. Then, she seemed to have thought of something. Her eyes gradually lit up and she became spirited. Yi Fei looked at Xiao Chao and the dragon turtle talking in a daze. The conversation this time was too complicated, so he did not really understand. He only saw Xiao Chao patting the dragon turtle's head as a form of praise. Then, Xiao Chao hurriedly ran back into the beast mark space. When she came out again, Xiao Chao had brought out her little blanket of spiritual herbs. On the blanket, there was a dazzling array of spiritual herbs that Xiao Chao had woven. Not only were they full of spiritual energy, but they were also all treasured herbs that were thousands of years old. Even the most ordinary spiritual herb on the blanket had medicinal energy that was thousands of years old. Yi Fei estimated that if he allowed Xiao Chao to continue sleeping like this in another 1,000 years, the spiritual herb might become a spirit and become another kind of spiritual item. At this moment, Xiao Chao was happily holding the spiritual herb in her hands. She was babbling something to the spiritual herb. The spiritual herb actually swayed its green leaves slightly, as if it understood Xiao Chao's instructions. Then, Xiao Chao puffed up her cheeks and blew a rainbow-colored spiritual wind at the spiritual herb. Yi Fei could tell that Xiao Chao was using the method of cultivating spiritual flowers to cultivate this spiritual herb. At the same time, as the rainbow-colored spiritual wind blew, the spiritual herb grew rapidly. A large amount of green light spots floated between the soft green leaf. These light spots quickly turned into another young spiritual herb. As it grew rapidly, it emitted even more green light spots and flew to every corner of the true martial sacred hall. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.